是。 Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Right.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening. Yes. All right. Let me. All right. The Kiwanis Club of the Garden Parish, the Bishop Law Foundation, and the Caribbean Graduate School of Theology.
When shall we get to going?
Okay, I'm calling this meeting to order at this moment. And then I'll just hand over to President Ingrid, who will play the national anthem.
Eternal Father, bless our land. Guide us with thy mighty hand. Keep us free from evil powers. Be our light through countless hours. To our leaders, great defenders, grant true wisdom from above. Justice, truth be ours forever. Jamaica, land we love. Jamaica, 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 land we love. Teach us true respect for all. Stir response to duty's call. Strengthen us the weak to cherish. Give us visions lest we perish. Knowledge centers, heavenly Father, grant true wisdom from above. Justice, truth be ours forever. Jamaica, land we love. Jamaica, 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 land we love.
Thank you, President Ingrid. I'll now call on Kiwanian Ladada to do the invocation and objects of Kiwanis International. And then that will be followed by the welcome introduction and roll call of clubs by PT Angela. Thank you. Is Kiwanian Ladada on? She's not. All right. Thank you. All right. So let me just go ahead and do the invocation and objects. Let us pray. Dear God, we thank you for who you are. Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for this meeting where we celebrate the International Day of the Girl Child. Heavenly Father, we pray for all the girls in the world. We pray, Almighty God, that you'll inspire them, Almighty God. Father, we pray, dear God, that, Lord, you will protect them. Father, we know, dear God, that they go through a lot. But Lord, we know that you love them. And so, God, we ask in the name of Jesus that, God, even as we have this meeting, that something said or something that will be done will inspire them, Lord. Father, we ask, dear God, that you'll take full control of our meeting. And we pray, Lord, that whatever is said and done tonight, it will bring honor and glory to your name. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Fellow Kiwanians and guests, kindly join me in repeating the objects of Kiwanis International. To give primacy to the human and spiritual rather than to the material values of life. To encourage the daily living of the golden rule in all human relationships. To promote the adoption and application of higher social, business, and professional standards. To precept and example a more intelligent, aggressive, and serviceable citizenship. To provide through Kiwanis clubs a practical means to form enduring friendships, to render altruistic service, and to build better communities. To cooperate in creating and maintaining that sound public opinion and a high idealism which make possible the increase of righteousness, justice, patriotism, and goodwill. Thank you.
Thank you, immediate past President Audrey, President Anne-Marie, fellow Kiwanians and guests. The task is mine to welcome you to our meeting. This evening's event is a panel discussion in recognition of International Day of the Girl Child in collaboration with Bishop Law Foundation and Caribbean Graduate School of Theology. We are all grateful that you have taken the time out of your busy schedule to be with us, and we hope it will be a beneficial experience for all. So welcome. At this time, I'll do the roll call of clubs, and I will start with Division 23 East. Division 23 Central. Division 23 West. Division 25.
Good afternoon, good night, President from 23 West.
Go right ahead, 23 West.
I'm President Marcia from the Kiwanis Club of South St. Catherine. With 4 of us online, others will be joining soon.
Welcome, President Marcia.
Yes, thank you.
Division
For a wonderful
25.
meeting.
Thank you. Division 25. So now we'll go to our own division, Division 24.
PT Angel, good evening, Kiwanis and guests. I'm representing Ocherius Club, Kiwanis Club of Ocherius. This is President Herman. And on we have also LG Luke. Have a good meeting.
Thank you, President Herman.
Good evening, fellow Kiwanians and guests. I am IPP Ingrid from the Kiwanis Club
of Charlton, Alexandria. And with me, I have Kiwani and Joshua. Others should be joining on later. Looking forward to a wonderful meeting.
Thank you, IPP Ingrid. Do we have any other members from Division 24?
Good night, PT Angelo. I'm Anne-Marie Bishop, President of the Kiwanis Club of the Garden Parish. Thank you.
Okay, President Anne-Marie.
Okay. Good night, everyone. Oh, President Anne-Marie is finished. I thought President Anne-Marie was finished. President.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. President Anne-Marie, I'm here with you. I am past President Al-Marie Chintasing.
Good evening, everyone.
I'm from Garden Parish as well.
Good evening, everyone. This is IPP Audrey from Kiwanis Club of the Garden Parish.
All right. So at this time, I'll invite Kiwani and Joshua to do the Kiwani's education. Thank you.
IPP Audrey, you said you would have done it?
Kiwani and Joshua is prepared, is he?
I told him that you said you would have, so I told him to stand down.
Oh, well, if he's prepared, what happened was
he's on the road.
All right, so I'll go right ahead. So it's just a simple one.
Okay.
That since we're dealing with the International Day of the Girl Child, a simple one is just that we are a part of a K family, and at the primary school, we know it is K Kids, or those are our babies. Then from there we have K Kids, our Builders Club. And then when the students get to high school, it is Key Club. When they transition from high school to college and university, it is Circle K Club. And when they become adults like ourselves, it is Kiwanis Club. So we're all a part of a K family. That's it. Thank you very much.
President Anne-Marie, it's your turn.
Good night, everyone. Thank you all for being here, and we're looking forward to an interesting meeting. I'm going to invite our Lieutenant Governor Luke Shorter Thomas to bring remarks, and after that, we will have Deputy Superintendent of Police, Miss Jacqueline Dillon, to bring her remarks with respect to International Day of the Girl Child and our sub-team. Followed by that, Ms. Dillon, we'll have our moderator, Lana Gay Franklin, to bring her remarks on behalf of the moderators. And then we'll move into the meat of the matter with panel discussion 1 and 2. Thank you.
Okay. This is my turn now. Okay. First of all, a correction. Thomas Shorter. Okay. It's there correctly on the first part of the agenda, but it's Luke Thomas Short. There seems to be a technical problem. Okay, I use the opportunity saying thank you for the invitation to be a part of this meeting as we recognize the International Day of the Girl Child. And we should be making this a concern that we have a day of the girl child and recognize that in today's Jamaica, our girl children and so as we recognize the day, we should also try to recognize some cause and effects of the challenges that they are going through. As Kiwanians, the Kiwanian family, we should also seek to create projects around how to protect the girl child. So it's an occasion that is to be celebrated and is to be reminiscent about. Look at ways in the society how we can protect and enhance the girl child. So I'm very, very glad to be a part of this discussion, and I wish this meeting all the success that is being designed for and that the objective will be met. And I hope that we'll all learn something from the panel discussions as we proceed to affect the life of our people. Thank you. Did you hear me, right?
Thank you, LG Luke. I now invite DSP Jacqueline Dillon to bring her opening remarks.
Good night, Kiwanians. Thank you for the invitation. As we celebrate today, International Day on the Girl Child, I want to take this opportunity on behalf of the Jamaica Constabulary Force to commend you for this discussion. This is the 10th year of celebration, and the theme for this year is Our Time is Now, Our Right, Our Future. As we in law enforcement every day grapple with violence against women and girls, it becomes evident that as a nation, we need to do more to protect our girls. And so for us, I want to say to you that one of the areas where we find girls being exposed to violence is in the homes and the communities through family violence, more so domestic violence that affect many homes that girls are a part of. And so I want to say to you that this is an opportunity to reach out to young girls in communities and lead the charge in helping them to be role models within their own communities, lead the charge in helping to protect each and every one of our girls. And in doing so, we will have a better nation, a better society, a better community. And so as you have your panel discussions around the various areas that affect girls, mental health, violence in the home, violence in schools, violence in the wider community, I implore on you to let us as a team go forward in educating our girls that there is no excuse for abuse, there's no excuse for violence, and there's always a better way. So I want to thank you again for inviting me, and on behalf of the Community Safety and Security Branch, I say all the best in your panel discussion tonight.
Thank you, DSP Delano, for that, your opening remarks, and we're always willing and ready to partner with the JCF as usual. And Kiwanis is about children, one child, one community at a time. That is our focus. And we appreciate that your team have in the past partnered with the Bishop Law Foundation and Kiwanis to do community-related activities. Thank you so much. I will now invite Lana Gay Franklin to bring opening remarks on behalf of the moderators, and the moderators are Dr. Victor Chiano and Ms. Stevenson. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lady Bishop. This is a very fitting occasion and a fitting theme. And I must say, I find your sub-theme very, very appealing, and especially most fitting jointly with the UNICEF theme of celebrating International Day for the Girl Child, building tenacious women as catalysts for change and pioneers for the future. Now, UNICEF has said that girls around the world continue to face unprecedented challenges to their education, their physical and mental wellness, and the protections needed for life without violence. Girls with disabilities face additional barriers to accessing support and services. But with adversity, however, comes resourcefulness, creativity, tenacity, and resilience. Girls are must be now ready for a decade of acceleration forward. With girls to invest in a future, we must stand with them and believe in their leadership qualities, believe in their potential. When women are empowered and can claim their rights and access to land, leadership, opportunities, education, and choices, we will find economies growing. We will find food security enhancing, and prospects are improved for current and future generation. I must commend the Kiwanis Club of the Gordon. They should be the Garden Parish, of course, the beautiful St. Anne, for partnering with the Bishop Law Foundation and the Caribbean Graduate School of Theology for hosting this webinar and this panel discussion, which you will find to be very fulfilling. We have a very rich panelists who will be here tonight. We have counseling psychologists, we have attorneys at law, members of the JCF, we have members from the conflict management and resolution area, interactive nutrition health coach, and also educators who will bring their perspective on the sub-theme. And may I remind you, building tenacious women as catalysts for change and pioneers for the future. On behalf of our moderators, I say welcome, and I do hope you are fulfilled this evening. I'm sure you will be. Thank you. Lady Bishop.
Thank you, moderator Lana Gay. And for the record, Lana Gay is one of my prospects.
Are you frozen? Oh, yes. So on that point, yes, I am indeed, and looking forward to becoming a member as I start out on this journey. On the agenda going down, of course, can one of the hosts bring the agenda up forward? I'm sorry, you're going a bit too fast. Where are we on the agenda? So we will now jump right in then, I guess, into our panel discussion. And of course, I have Dr. Victor. Do come on camera and introduce yourselves. Doc?
Just 1 minute, please.
Oh, not a problem. So Dr. Victor this evening will be co-hosting with me for the first segment. And of course, on this panel, we have Dr. Philbert Emil. I'm sure I'm not seeing everyone, but I'm sure his camera is on, who is a counseling psychologist and pastor. We also have another counseling psychologist and pastor with us, and that's Dr. Lily Tomlinson. And we have Dr. Kadia Hilton Fraser, who is a well-known educator, very serious woman about the business of education. And of course, we have with us as well the beautiful Lorraine Rainford, who is our interactive nutritionist health coach. I do say a wonderful welcome and good evening to our esteemed panel. I am so looking forward to hearing from every one of you. But before we jump into getting the information from you, I'm going to ask Dr. Victor, are you up and running? I'd really love for you to say a little about yourself and introduce yourself to us.
Thank you so very much, Franklin. My name is Dr. Chukwemeka Victor Chiana, Academic Dean, Caribbean Graduate School of Theology. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. And I'm looking forward to a wonderful evening spending with you. First, I'm going to ask Dr. Philbert Emil to bring his opening remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, panelists, you can say a little about yourself. I'm going to give you the option this evening to give us just a mini bio. Tell us what you do. Tell us about you. And you can bring your opening remarks as we dive into this wonderful discussion. Dr. Emil, you're up first.
I thank you much. Thanks for your warm introduction. It's International Day of the Girl Child. And so it's a day when we must celebrate them. They are going to be the pioneers of tomorrow. And so it is imperative that we spend some time tonight and look at how it is that we want to prepare them for the future. As said on the agenda, I am a pastor, counseling psychologist. I think that that is enough for tonight. I'm comfortable with that. I also want to say that girls are more susceptible to different types of or different degrees of mental disorder or mental health issues, based on the fact that when we look at the research, there's a research that was done some time ago by Stanford University, which shows that girls, after going through traumatic situations, their brain, their insular cortex is much smaller, as is a part of their brain that focuses on emotion and act as a microchip for clues as it relates to information coming into the brain. It is much smaller, and so we find girls going into becoming women with post-traumatic stress disorder and things like that. So it tells us as a society that we need to ensure that we create environments that would protect our girls. They are exposed to
domestic violence, sexual abuse, and such the like. And it is our duty as a society to ensure that they are taken care of.
Indeed, Dr. Emil, you have said it quite well. Dr. Victor, do you have any remarks before we jump right into our next panelist?
I think what Dr. Emil has done is just to set the ball rolling. So let's move on.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. I am not going to bring in Dr. Tomlinson, who is also a psychologist. I'm going to save her for until the other two has gone, or Dr. Hilton Fraser.
All right, good evening, Ms. Franklin, and good evening to everyone on this meeting. Thank you once again for inviting me. And I really do feel privileged and honored to be part of this moment as we celebrate the International Day of the Girl Child. The irony is that I'm a mother of 3 boys, but just understanding, I think, even more pivotally what my role is as a woman, how I help to shape and mold my young men to help to build those pioneers and those catalysts for change. But I am an educator. I have been an educator for over 20 years. And it is something that I'm definitely very passionate about. But I wanted to bring a little twist on things in terms of the presentation. And I wanted to start with these names. So if you give me a little latitude: Terry Carell Reed, Nicole McLaren Campbell, Simone Clark Cooper, Jacqueline Bisesa McKenzie, Paula Llewellyn, Esther Tyson, Rear Admiral Weems Gorman, and I could go on. Tenacious, catalysts, pioneers. Now, these words and these women certainly leave lasting impressions in my mind in terms of the impact we need to keep having in our education system if we are indeed intent on continuing to raise persistent women who are sparks of change, blazing trails wherever they go and whatever they do. So internationally, through this celebration, we know that calls are being made to support our girls as leaders. And I think in our schools and classrooms, that may mean creating spaces for our girls to know that their voices and their opinions matter. That may also mean that teachers and school leaders are far more intentional about including girls in the decisions that affect their school experience and their daily lives. But more broadly, as we aim to shape, mold, and influence our girls through education, we must build that empowering culture in our schools and, of course, beyond, to help them to develop and use their voice, not just to advocate for themselves, but for others. So they have to be supported to understand that they're partners in their education process, encouraged to disagree, to think independently, to have choice, and to know that those choices come with responsibility. And certainly as educators, we have to think about not contributing to those stereotypical messages in language or actions about gender and gender roles, and hold the men and women in our spaces and our lives to account in cases where they falter. I'll pause for now.
Well said, Dr. Hilton Fraser. Thank you so much. I tell you, she's serious about the business of education. And when I say that, I say it with no joke. She is indeed. But guess what? In order for us to progress in education and to progress with the mental health, nutrition is very important. Or nutrition or well-being. Without good food in our body, I don't know how we would function, right? We would not be able to. Therefore, I'm going to bring in the beautiful Lorraine Rainford, who is an interactive nutritionist, health coach.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is, well, you heard my name already. I'm an integrative nutrition health coach.
Integrative.
But you know, interactive is not a bad word, because integrative does speak to interacting. You know, very often when we go to the doctors, we're kind of just told what we should do and what we should take. And you know, very often we don't ask any questions, but in this case, it's very much an interactive process to work with an integrative nutrition health coach. Good evening, everyone. So it's interesting that I am here in this capacity because I started out as a journalist and realized that that's not what I love doing. I love to talk about what food does for the body. And I am particularly passionate about the way we feed our children. So it's a good thing that I have notes to keep me in check this evening about this particular issue. So I had never heard about the International Day of the Girl Child, and I found out there's one for the boy child as well. So that's nice and good. And as you said, Lana Gay, that what we eat is going to be so important to the process. For us to be able to, tenacity is being able to hold on to grip. You know, pioneers means we're going to blaze a trail. We're starting something new. And we can't do it, well, we can do it stuck in a bed. I mean, it's just a little bit harder, right? One of the things that I believe about women is that we are tenacious generally. And we are, a lot of the things that we talked about here, you know, speaking our minds, knowing what we want, I find that we're like that. And we just need to really, really just be allowed the space and the latitude to really give it an opportunity. You know, give ourselves the opportunity, or give the women the opportunity to do that. Well, today we'll talk about how the food affects you and how the food affects your girl child as she's growing up to make her that tenacious pioneer that you want her to be. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lorraine. I'm so looking forward to hearing much more as we engage in the discussion. Dr. Lilith Tomlinson, I will now invite you. She is a counseling psychologist and also a pastor. Is there some connection with counseling psychologists and pastors? We'll talk about that at another time. Dr. Tomlinson? Let me just run a quick check to make sure that Dr. Tomlinson is on. Okay, based on what I'm seeing from the numbers, no, it does not seem as if Dr. Tomlinson is on at this time, but when she does join, probably having some connectivity issues, when she does join, we will give her, of course, the opportunity to introduce herself and speak. But until then, let us jump right into the discussions. Dr. Victor, do you want to lead us off? Any question that popped up in your mind immediately as our panelists were introducing themselves?
Thank you, Ms. Franklin. I think I want to start with the educator, Dr. Hilton Fraser. She alluded to something which I probably think she just needs to expound a little more for us. The culture of empowerment. In other words, empowerment culture. If you don't mind, Dr. Hilton Fraser, can you just let us know, because I believe that the audience really want to know what you meant by the empowerment culture. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you for that question / comment. And, you know, just to kind of go back to what Ms. Nichols was saying a while ago, that she does believe that as women, we are tenacious, we are persistent. And I think she's absolutely right. However, if we have that culture, meaning we literally have that space, that tendency, the way we operate, not just within education, but more broadly in our society, where women actually realize that, yes, they can say no. And I'll give you a prime example. So for example, as a young girl, and I'm sure there are probably women here that can relate to this. As a young girl traveling in the bus, and there's a man behind me and being inappropriate, I feel uncomfortable, but I don't feel like I can say anything or call attention to what he's doing, because I have not been taught, it has not been modeled to me to say no, and to say no forcefully, because I'm thinking, I don't want to make this person feel uncomfortable, one, and I don't want any attention or unnecessary, unwanted attention brought to me. So I remain silent. And so we then have this culture of silence instead of this culture of empowerment, where women literally feel like it is okay for me to say no, to speak up, and not to be so considerate or thinking more about what it is that other people think or the opinion of others, rather than our own safety or our own voice or opinions. So that's what I mean when I talk about that power, that culture of empowerment.
Doc?
Yes, Dr. Hilton Fraser. I mean, I'm just here relaxing myself as you expounded on that culture of empowerment. All right, moving now along. I want to hand.
Yes,
go
and
ahead.
that was an excellent point that you made about sitting in the bus. And of course, and most of us, if not all of us, would have used the bus, the public transportation at some point growing up, going to school and getting home. And especially if you are getting home later than the usual, because you might have sports practice after, some netball training or track and field, and you're engaged in other activities, and you're going home a bit later than usual. So the buses are not packed with all children your age and everybody looking like you. The buses are packed with adults as well. And of course, I'm sure many of us can relate to situations such as that. I can relate myself. So it's not a comfortable feeling. And indeed, teaching them the culture of empowerment. I really like that. I really like that term. I'm going to take it. I really like that term. I really like that term. We need our women and our girl children to really be empowered and say, no, I'm not comfortable. Stop what you are doing. Thank you. Dr. Emil, I really always want to ask, because I'm sure many persons may have an idea, what exactly is mental illness? When we talk about mental illness, some persons may say, oh, that the one they're mad, that the one they're mad. That's how we will term it in our Jamaican language. But I would love for you, Doc, to tell us exactly what is mental wellness.
Mental wellness is the ability to manage your emotion, to manage the stress, the normal stresses of life, the stress that comes within one's environment, whether it is your work environment, your home environment, your social environment. It's the ability to manage all the stress within those environments and still be productive. So we look at girls as we are looking at International Day for the Girl Child. So we look at how it is that they are able to manage, and somebody spoke a while ago, Dr. Hilton Fraser, about empowerment and how we empower our girls to manage. And it's not just about empowerment in a particular domain, it is empowerment right across the board so that they feel comfortable, they feel confident, they feel that sense of ownership of self, that they can make decisions and feel comfortable and confident about making these decisions about whether it is something that is happening now, something for the future, or something that is concerning others within their environment.
Dr. Hilton Fraser wrote in the chat that even the language, the very language around mental illness needs to change. How do you feel about that, Doc?
I think I agree with that, because it is belittling and a stereotypical attachments that are affixed to it when there's a particular language. And if you notice, things have started to change. Once we used to call people with disability, intellectual disability, idiots and all of that, the change have started along those lines. And so we as a society must ensure that we continue to press to ensure that these stereotypical norms and labelings and all of that, these are changed so that persons within society, whether it be boys or girls, if I may generalize on a night like this, boys or girls can feel comfortable to speak up and to speak out about things. And the thing about it as well is that we as adults, we as catalysts of change currently must also focus on the critical areas of society that will help people to create a greater balance and be more mentally stable, both emotionally and behaviorally.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Doc. And once again, I want to say welcome and I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us. We're having a very robust discussion as we look at the theme, building tenacious women as catalysts for change and pioneers for the future. I also want to say a special welcome to President Elaine Brawls of Matilda's Corner District Consultative Committee and other committee members. Of course, Lady Bishop is a member and part of that parenting committee, and also welcome Shorjay, our law student. Thank you. We have a very rich panel here. We have Dr. Philbert Amiel, counseling psychologist and pastor. We have Dr. Katie Hilton Fraser, educator, Lorraine Rainford, integrating health coach, integrating nutrition health coach. I make sure to get it correct. And of course, joining us shortly, we should have Dr. Lilith Tomlinson. Dr. Lady Rainford, I want to bring you in now. You started a little, and I want you to elaborate some more. Give us the connection between the mental, the education, and nutrition, the importance of it.
Okay, so one of it is it's almost a catch-22. You kind of wonder which one comes first, you know, because if we're not having certain kinds of foods in our diets, eating balanced meals, it can affect the way we think. It can affect mental clarity. It can affect so many things. If you're not sleeping well, it's very difficult to be able to ward off weight loss and weight gain. It's so integrated. At the same time, the way you're thinking and what you're thinking about directly affects the appetite that you have. So if you're very worried about something, if you're anxious about something, you can do one of two things. You can not eat, or you can eat a lot of foods that are high in fat and high in sugar as you seek to find some comfort. And the truth is, your body calls out for that whenever it is that you're stressed, whenever it is that you're anxious. So having good mental health hinges on nutrition, can hinge on your nutrition, and vice versa. Your nutrition can affect, because if you're having a lot of processed foods, a lot of sugar that is added, the white sugar. Most of the sugar in food that we eat, that we buy, is white sugar. Although we may say, I don't eat white sugar, but every time you buy a piece of cake, a bun, or anything that's packaged, unless it says brown sugar, it's white sugar, right? So when we're eating those kinds of foods, then it literally affects your ability sometimes to think straight. Do you understand? So they can really affect each other. So having enough of the right kinds of food, the more complex kinds of carbohydrates, like our foods that grow here, our yams and our breadfruit, and having our dasheen and our green bananas and so on. Those are much more complex foods, much better for us, and will give us longer lasting energy, cause us to maintain our weight, because if we're having those along with vegetables and we have more fiber, we're more full. So it's all tied in. It's really hard to separate your nutrition from your mental health and vice versa. It just really is.
Dr. Hilton Fraser, are we seeing the connection in the system now?
And absolutely. And if you look at the most recent thrust from the Ministry of Education in terms of getting the nutrition policy in place in schools, just thinking through what that looks like, the kinds of foods that are sold and available in schools for children. That is a big thing. When the Ministry of Health launched Jamaica Moves several years ago, that was a part of the thrust as well, to make sure that our children were moving more. Can you imagine right before the pandemic, and then the pandemic hit, and just like that, our children were moving significantly less. And what you found as well is that the moods changed because they were not having the opportunity to move around, to socialize. So that mental wellness piece was not being facilitated as much. And I can give you an anecdote. I have a young son, and he might crucify me if he heard me, but I remember initially during the pandemic, when it just shut down, he's an avid footballer. He wasn't able to play football, right? Because that was not happening, and how it affected him. He wasn't sleeping right. He wasn't eating right, right? So she's absolutely right in how things are so integrated, and it's very hard to subtract one from the other, disentangle them, because they're so connected. And so if I think of how the ministry is trying to push this policy for not just educators, but for parents, for teachers, for principals, to understand that, listen, we need to have more nutritious things available for our students so that they can make better choices when they're at school. Because sometimes, you have a situation where the students know that they get the yam at home, they get in the sweet potato, they get in all of those things at home. But when they go to school, they know they can buy the little box drink, they can buy the little, bag juice, whatever. But if some of those things are reduced, and certainly we know that they're trying to also cut down on the sugar content. If some of those things are reduced, then we're hoping as well that they will make better choices. And I remember seeing a news clip where there was a vendor who was saying, boy, I'm going to try and get on board with this because I want to make sure that I help the children. So just really looking at that holistic thing and seeing really how they are absolutely connected.
Panelists, remember, you can jump in at any time if you want to make a comment after one of your panel, discussion. One of the members have made a point and you want to elaborate or you want to make a comment, it is fine. I see your mic is open.
Yes, because I wanted to, as Dr. Fraser talked about what the ministry is trying to put in place, I wonder sometimes about how well informed it is. One of the things that concerns me is it's great for children to eat, but is it enough for them just to eat? It's what are they going to be eating? One of the things that's really critical, once it is that you are growing, do you know that children actually need more calories than adults? Right? They need more protein, they need more carbohydrates. I'm talking about the average adult. By the time you get to 25 years old, your resting metabolic rate, which is that how your body burns calories at rest, pretty much goes down. So you really want to be careful when you get to 25. But as you are growing, as they're forming bones, as they're forming muscle, as they're doing all of that from 0 to 19, the quality of the food is very important. The amount of protein, the amount of fiber, for women, but we know, we see period, we have children, women really do carry the weight, so to speak, of the society. We're the ones that are going to carry the children, not the men. So our bodies are the ones that are going to need the calcium. And we need to get that calcium in our bodies between 14 and 19, 21. We need the calcium then to help mitigate against osteoporosis and those things, because once we start to have children, then the children, your bodies are going to give to those children in your bellies everything. All your omega-3s, all your calcium, everything that the child needs to develop is going to be taken from you. So you want to make sure that you're getting enough of these nutrients, and you need to start from your little girl, but even more so by the time you get to 10. Those minerals, the folic acid, the calcium, the iron, those are really, really critical. And what is also important is that it's also going to be dependent on how big your child is and how active she is and what is she going to be doing. If she's very sedentary and more into playing music than she is into playing football or or volleyball or something else, then her nutritional needs differ, you know. And if it is that they can't get what they want, what they need at home, then they're going to just, the hunger that they have because they're growing, they will just have whatever is available. And that's not going to set them up for the future to be the pioneers we want them to be tenacious that we want them to be. We need to start now.
Well said. And it brings me to my next question. Who is responsible for all of this? Who is responsible for ensuring the mental wellness, Dr. Emil, the education, the nutrition? When we think of low-income earners, when we think of families who you would put on the lower scale of the strata, who is responsible?
I think it starts in the home. Dr. Fraser touched on the policymaker component of it, but I think it starts within the home. And just to segue a bit, you know, to add a little bit to what Ms. Nichols said, you know, I think sleep is an important component in all of this, you know, and when we look at girls as it relates to doing exam and studying and all of that, and they push the time clock. And once they start to push the time clock, what you find is that the sleep time is reduced. The socialization is also reduced. And a critical part of external socialization in the open is a vitamin D component that you get from the sun, which impacts your circadian rhythm, help you to sleep better at night, which is a critical component of how they develop into adults and how they become more tenacious and more formative catalysts of change.
Doc, I hear you. But when we're talking about a home where a girl has to go in from school, she has the younger ones to look after because mother ain't there. She's out trying to work, right? It starts from the home. But how do we expect her to get adequate sleep, complete the homework, complete the studies, and be ready mentally and be ready with the nutrition needed for the next day?
These are some of the challenges we have. And I suppose, Dr. Fraser, you want to jump in here. So you can go ahead and I'll come on the rear end.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is a challenge, and it's just symptomatic of how complex the situation is. But not just how complex it is, but also the fact that if you have a problem that's so complex, it means that you need multiple ways of solving that issue or addressing that issue. So if I go back to Ms. Rainford, who thinks about how things are interconnected. Sorry. No, because I made the error as well.
I'm sorry.
So thank you.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
But if I think about that, the fact that everything is so interconnected, yes, we know things start in the home, but what if, as you said, you know, there is a mother, or there is a father, or there is a grandmother, or an auntie, or an uncle who may not know certain things. Here it is, we're having this conversation, and I'm sure some of us may be learning some of these things for the first time in terms of some of the nutritional needs of the young girls at certain ages. And I won't tell you how I feel about the metabolic rate thing. Stop, you know, reducing after 25. We're not going to talk about that, but it is a complex issue. So it means that, and allow me to sound almost aspirational, if you will, where getting back to some of those basic things where we're literally going back to this village concept where we're looking at what's happening over there with my neighbor. What's happening over there with my friend's daughter or my friend's son or whatever. We need to get back to some of those principles. And I'm sorry, but those are the kinds of hopes and ambitions I have for this country, where we really do look out for each other. So my mother was a single mother, and believe me when I tell you, she had I had a lot of church aunties and uncles who supported my mother. The things that she may not have been able to do or to provide, they were there to provide the moral support, or, you know, the little talk to when the talking to was needed. But the point is, wherever she may not have been sufficient in, there were other people to kind of pick up that slack. And that's what we need to get back to, because yes, we're going to fold our arms and say, well, this person I know no better, that person I know no better. How are we going to coalesce around them as a society to help them? Because at the end of the day, those are the very things that are going to come back to us and affect us as a society. So how are we helping, whether at the school level? So when they come to school and we realize that they're not sleeping right, or they're probably not eating right, what are the supports that we're, you know, we have the guidance and counseling department, or we have some other department, welfare departments that are tasked to help and to support not just the student, but also the parent. We think of the church, you know, going out to outreach to help some of these communities and parents. So we literally have to go back to some of those basics where we're really looking at that village concept to help each other.
For real, the single mother reality is very real in our country. I was raised by a single mother too, and I had to learn how to prepare meals. I didn't have a choice. And she kind of threw me in there to figure it out. You know, there were some things that she did tell me, and then when she came home, she would fix it so that it tastes better for when she's going to have it. But you just had to figure it out. And but one of the things that, as you said that, though, Dr. Fraser, is that I can remember her making preparation. So one of the things that I like to do for the clients that I have, and I particularly like to work with professional women, you know, who have a lot to do and, you know, they work long hours, is help them to plan. So pre-prepare meals. What can you do for 2 or 3 days? You know, one of the important things is, even if you're not watching the calories, if you can try and get as many kinds of protein in a week, you know, so you're mixing a little peas and you're having a little soy and you're eating some chicken and some fish and you're having your greens, you're finding your nuts and you're finding ways to get all the different kinds of food, but even more so. So one of the things that I do, and I've done when I was having to get up early in the morning and come back late at night, is that I would prep. I would cook peas for, you know, 3 or 4 bags, you know, do it on the weekend. I would pre-cook meals and have them there so that we can just come in and maybe cook a little rice or cook some, you know, I would do a salad on a Sunday that would, whatever I can, whatever I have, vegetables, lettuce, tomato, whatever it is. And I put that in the fridge so that whenever for the next 3 days, I don't have to do that again. So planning as parents, it's really, really going to be up to us, you know, it really is. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and we need to reach out and offer help. Single parents in this way, we really do. The churches need to do it. Community Ministry of Health needs to do it. It has to be all of our responsibility. But helping these moms to be able to organize their time so that they can do this, you know, pre-prepare meals so that they don't, and teach their, you know, their girl child, their boy child, everybody who is in the house, how to warm up this and make a little rice. You know, how to warm up this and do a piece of yam, whatever it is that we're going to be doing so that they can have the meals available. But it helps too if the parents are eating the vegetables. You know, I mean, a lot of parents who don't eat vegetables.
That is so true. I'm not going to point anything else, but
yes, it's true. They struggle to drink the water, you know, they struggle to make sure they don't miss a meal. They struggle to do that. And so even as the parents are struggling, then it's kind of hard sometimes to influence the child the way you want to. But
the way you would want to.
It's never too late to start.
And I'm very excited. I see where we're heading. I hear all the, you know, wonderful points that are coming out. I'm very excited about what has been said thus far. And Dr. Fraser, I hear you about the community. I want to know how prepared we are to call it out. How prepared are we to bring it to the forefront? Because mothers, single mothers, are we willing? Are we ready to open the homes, accept the help, because we know what is behind the dark clouds. How easy is it to let the aunties and the uncles in our homes when our boys and our girls are being affected? So I hear you. Dr. Lily Tomlinson is on, and we are going to now bring her in. Dr. Tomlinson, welcome, welcome.
Good night. It is a pleasure to be here tonight. Such a healthy.
Rich discussion.
On that word, discussion. So it's really a pleasure to be here. And as we are talking about the whole matter of nutrition and the woman rather, and her transformation as she moves from, from child to adolescent and then moving on into the whole matter of adulthood, there are so many things to be considered. And tonight, my role is to look to some extent at how that little girl that evolved into a teenager, then goes into young adult and then makes her way into adult life. What are some of the career things that she has to consider? Because there may be things that she wants to consider that her body is not even considering as well. So how does she prepare herself physically as well as mentally to be able to take on some of the challenges that she's no doubt likely to face? As females, though, we have a lot to celebrate, and we're not feminists or anything at all. We just like to celebrate the gains. I tell people that all the time. Once there's a discussion on women, people think that we are feminists and we're advocating this. No, we're just looking at the balance, and that's what gender parity is all about. Work as it relates to career and women, the research has proven, there was a body of work done by Anthony Nadoon and Charmaine E. May. And when they looked at the whole matter of the career development, we know that in, career development and career psychology has been very largely Eurocentric and androcentric by nature. However, over time, as they looked on that and from that perspective, the work done by women initially in the home was just seen as something done. It wasn't seen as any big work. But as time has evolved, we have seen where the role of women and their contribution, whether in the home or outside the home, is considered as a tangible part of economic development, right? So the woman over time has, delightfully gained her place as a major contributor to in the big economic scheme. For generations, women have been working whether in the house or in the land, but these work, as I said earlier on, were not really given as much worth as they said. They were marginalized. However, the stereotype has been challenged and has changed. And today we see women receiving their rightful attention and the rightful kind of accolades as they deserve. I want to say though that as we look into this, there's still that glass ceiling that for some organization, when you look at boards and so on, you might see a one lady. even though to some extent the glass ceiling is still there, but many women have been able to, an organization now, even from a political standpoint, have been able, thank you very much, Dr. Kadian, the token woman. Right. So I don't think as a gender, we are where we want to be in terms of the balance, but we are certainly making a lot of strides. And as I was saying, from the political standpoint as well, we see where even in Parliament, they're trying to make sure that on different committees and in the Parliament itself, there's this kind of gender balance. All right. So as we move on, when we look at some of the body of work, one of the things that we're looking at is that what is it that women are saying that they would like and that young females need to also be mindful of? The major concern of the research that I am making reference to was on the whole matter of transparency. It was felt that to some extent that there was still these areas that sometimes it wasn't considered that the discussion that was held in light of promotions and stuff like that was very transparent. Many women that were surveyed, and this was a survey done in 2018, PwC carried out a survey aimed at findings, answer, and had a number of questions that they wanted answers to. And over 3,600 women around the world from employers representing 27 different industry sectors shared their views on careers. They were between the ages of 28 and 40 because it was at this stage of their development that you start seeing female representation gaps widen and the challenges of combining personal and career priority increases. One of the things I think is very interesting is how, when we look at the academic performance of male versus female, because there usually seem to be a lot more females that are on that achievement chart, but somehow as you get to the higher levels, you see that there are more men supposedly that have achieved more in terms of performance in the workplace and compensation and so on. So the question is, where did that gap develop? What happened in between a lot more females accomplishing the 9 subjects, getting the awards at the graduation, and between being placed in the place of work? So those are some interesting research that we can also develop. But what is known is that many women said that they wanted to feel that when it came to things like career development and promotion, they wanted more transparency. They feel that this was a critical step that employers still need to take. And this means employers offering them a clear understanding of the expectation of both sides of the employment equation, including information about career progression and conversation as to where they stand and what is expected of them as they advance career. So they made their own case successful and trust the feedback they get. Because a lot of women felt that sometimes when they were bypassing the promotion, the reason given wasn't very transparent. It was like, this could not be, I mean, if I was a male, would you still use this as the reason I wasn't being given this promotion? So greater transparency won't only benefit women, it will foster more inclusive environment, which gives men and women greater opportunities to fulfill their potential. Another thing that women want as they advance in their career is that they wanted more support along the way. Women won't succeed without formal or informal support network. And this is both for corporate as well as for family. And I heard one of the presenters before me, as she mentioned the whole matter of the nutrition, and she was saying how important it was for us to get back to the community helping out. And so even as we progress along the pendulum to achieving financial independence, financial success, we are also going to need support. Women need dedicated sponsors, role models of both genders. Lack of support from male colleagues will stall the progress. You know, when you go to that board meeting and you have this great idea, you need a support. You know, especially sometimes when you're the token gender in the room and you need the support of all these men in the room to be able for that great promotion and so on. So support is one of the things that women also need. And of course, there is a big ticket item, the whole matter. So these are the concerns that women have as they, you know, they move along the path of attaining higher economic and financial independence and just to pursue their own personal careers for themselves and their family. They're saying that they also want to be able to strike that balance between motherhood and the pursuit of those career goals. So women universally across the globe said working in a job they enjoy and flexibility to balance the demands of their career and their personal life. So there was this thing one time that many persons say, oh, you're a career woman, so that's why you don't want any family. But the reality is that it is not an easy balance. And sometimes if you don't get the balance right, something suffers. So what women are saying is that give us the support and we think that we'll be better able to deliver on both sides of the fence. But they feel that sometimes nervous about the impact of starting a family and how that might impact their career. So you find that for some career women, they either sometimes have children later, or sometimes they will adopt, or they have no children at all, or a limited amount of children. And many new mothers felt overwhelmed for promotion and special projects on their return to work. This was particularly true of new mothers, especially from ethnic, racial minority and new mothers in Asia. Employers must pay special attention to these groups and proactively address their concerns. Or they and their female employees risk a lose-lose situation because there are a lot of what we refer to as talented young woman who needs to be given that kind of support to contribute to the wider society. So whereas we see that, as I said earlier on, that the glass ceiling is shattering little by little, women are making dent in that ceiling. There's still a lot more room for maneuvering, a lot more doors that need to be open, a lot more discussions and support that needs to be had. So I'll just pause there for a while.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Thomason. I mean, that is a mouthful. Can I tell you, there were so many things just running through my head, so many questions popping up, and I couldn't even jot them down in time. But there's one that is in the chat, which wanted you to expound a little on Dr. Hilton Fraser's term that she had placed in the chat of the token female. Just tell us a little more about what that really is.
Right. Okay. So the other term that just slipped me, like, you know, when you go to university, right? And they have where they say, okay, we have to take two Black students, and we have to take, so I don't remember, the term just slipped me. So in the same way, it's that token woman, so that there appears to be this balance. So you will have a board of, say, for example, 20 males, and you have 1 female. Right? So it's like, okay, let us make it look a little balanced. But you know, there can be no balance with a 1 versus 11 men, right? And they feel that, okay, maybe she'll express the issues that are softer and speak about the concerns of the women. But sometimes you are not even on the main board, but you're on the secondary board or a subcommittee. But they will make mention of it as if it's a big deal. And in some, like I say, some companies, they make a big deal about it, but other companies do it in the form of a token.
The token woman. Excellent. Dr. Victor, I need you to come in. I need you. This woman needs the support of a man. Dr. Victor, tell me what has been going through your mind as you listen to this rich discussion.
Listening to the panelists, I'm just like saying, wow. The Boys Club, as mentioned by Dr. Hilton Fraser, the patriarchal disposition that probably is one of the things that is probably limiting the comprehensive shattering of the ceiling. And I'm hearing all of this conversation, I'm telling you. But just one quick question I want to answer, and that goes to Dr. Emil, and the second one to Dr. Hilton Fraser. How do we build this culture of empowerment in such a way that, again, it will help to boost the tenacity that we want to see, in our girl's child? Dr. Fraser, if you don't mind, this culture of empowerment, because I strongly believe that our audience, they want to hear, they want to know how that culture can be developed, and as such, help to empower our girl child.
So thank you again for that question. And I think I had referenced it very briefly in my opening remarks. Just this idea of creating spaces for girls to recognize that their voices can be heard, but not just that their voices can be heard, but their voices and their opinions matter. And that might sound simple, but it's not, because if we think culturally, we exist in a space, whether in education or in our families, and we're moving from that little by little for sure, where it is children must be seen but not heard. And that's deeply embedded. And I part of moving away from that is for us to create those spaces where our children know that it is safe for them to have an opinion about something, an opinion that is different from yours, and they not be chastised and crucified for having that opinion that is different from yours. Like, oh my goodness, my child is going to disagree with me. They're not being disrespectful, but they are offering their opinion about something. And when you make a child recognize that, oh, my opinion is valid, mommy's listening to what I'm saying, the teacher is listening to what I'm saying, then it shifts the balance now for them to start thinking about, oh, so maybe I can talk a little bit more about my opinions. I can say something. I can, participate a little bit more. Yes, they have like student council. They have many opportunities for leadership, but I'm talking about what we call the hidden curriculum, the things that we do, because remember, children is more about what you do, right, than what you say. You can tell them anything you want to tell them, but if they are not seeing that being modeled, and Ms. Rainford talked about it earlier in terms of if you're not drinking the water consistently, you know how hard it's going to be to get a child to drink water. If you're not eating the vegetables, you know how hard it is to get a child to do that. So if we are modeling those things where you're in a class, imagine a teacher, and I'm going to give you this example. As a teacher, I taught Spanish for a long time. And I remember there was a book that we were doing. I taught Spanish literature. And we were doing the book and we're having a conversation about it. And, we're analyzing it a particular way. So a student said to me, but Senora, have you thought about so-and-so? And I was floored. I was like, I never thought about this that way. This is fantastic, because ultimately, when you're talking about literature, if you can give your evidence in terms of what your opinion is, you can work. But here it was that he was changing how I thought about something, not because I thought I was all of a sudden the sage on the stage. It was the guide now where I am taking a little bit of instruction from my students, right? So think of that even more broadly, where we really make our young girls and our boys too, because I'm not going to separate the two, right? We change the languaging where they know that what they have to say is important, but we raise them in a way where they can say it responsibly, respectfully, and different views contend. And I don't think it's something that is unknown to us. Many places are doing it, many schools are doing it, many institutions are doing it, and it's just something that we need to do more consistently, so that because remember, I had those examples of these tenacious women that we have, these pioneers. We have it, we've raised them. We just need to do more to continue to raise them.
So thank you, Ms. Dr. Fraser. So what I'm hearing you say, that there is need for not just the parents, but also the school, different organizations. There is need to create this awareness to educate them of the importance, why it is important for children, especially the girl child, to be given that space where they'll be able to air their view and be respected within that context. Thank you so very much.
I just want to add something as well that I am very passionate about. I want to thank Dr. Katie and Hilton Fraser. I'm very passionate about this issue of communication. We have grown up as youngsters, right? As she said, boy or girl, to be seen and not heard. And in our Jamaican society, that has come back to haunt us. And it's something I'm passionate about, especially as it relates to abuse, because if children absorb that rhetoric and said, you should be seen and not heard, sometimes when they're abused because of that, how they have been, it has been so ingrained in them, you talk too much and you are always the cause of this and so on. And what we speak over them in instances when these young girls are being abused and you try to say, why didn't you say something to mom or dad? When you get deep to the core of it, it's always like, whenever I say something, I'm being told to shut up, or I talk too much, or, you are the one who always in there. So I'm really an advocate that their children should be allowed to express themselves within a context, because if we tell them to be too quiet, they'll be silent on issues that are of importance to them and of concern to us. And then it's going to be too late when the truth comes forward. So I really encourage parents to have dialogue with their children, and them to know what is appropriate conversation when presence is required, and when they need to just be, be there and not be the center of the discussion.
Yes, thank Dr. Tomlinson. You really touched an important area, And that have to do with the culture of silence. How then do we break that culture of silence? And that question is being thrown to Dr. Emil.
All right, thank you, Dr. Chiana. Now, I want to just add to the point Dr. Tomlinson made, just to broaden it a bit, about the fact that we need to create a culture of listening, a culture of listenership. It is important. We can say what we want to say, but the important thing, as Dr. Fraser said, when you demonstrate that will to listen to them, then it develops a level of confidence that by saying it to them, you can create that culture. So the more we listen to them is the more we say to them that we want to hear what you're saying. We want to hear what is happening, and we want to know what is happening in your life as well. But you can say it, but if you don't show it, then it doesn't mean anything to them. And so in speaking to what you asked, I think it is important for us to understand what is it that we want from our children, because it is only when we understand them, then we can understand how to shape or how to create the platform or the stage for them to act on. We cannot, because it can't be that we want our children to be us. They must talk like us. They must do what we say that they must do. Everything about us is what they must do. Yeah, independent beings. They think for themselves. They want to act for themselves. And Dr. Fraser said that don't be surprised when they say something outside of the norm. Understand where that is coming from. And only when we understand our children, then we can create the right environment for them.
I'm going to ask you, Dr. Emil, who exactly is the we that you're talking about here? I would say that most of us here that are on this platform, maybe we can do that. We're talking about creating a culture. And there was an example earlier about the child that goes home and has to cook and take care of younger ones and so on. Are those parents the we that we're talking about? How exactly do we get those parents who don't feel free to speak themselves to do what you're talking about? If we're going to do, if we're going to create a culture, I would say the church and the school. But the truth is, I don't know how many of our children are going to church anymore, especially since COVID, right? So I would say that this culture needs to be developed. I think the onus is unfairly on the school, but this is where, for the most part, everybody agrees that their child should go to school. And this is where there are the people who are thinking like you, Dr. Fraser, are thinking like you, Dr. Tomlinson, that children need to be heard, that they need to be listened to. Because I don't know that we're going to be able to get to develop that culture in their homes. We can do it in our homes, yeah? And there may be some other parents that can do it in their homes, but I don't know if the vast majority of the girl children that we need to impact are going to be able, that culture, I don't know, we're going to have to kind of culture that in school. And if they're a part of clubs, and if they're a part of, and in the churches for those who come, so that when the children go home, so we can tell them, okay, look, it's okay for you to speak to your parents. You just have to do it a certain way. So maybe we can teach them about doing it respectfully, because like, for instance, in my household, my youngest child, my younger son, he speaks very freely. Sometimes I have to let him know that tone is not going to work. So I try to listen to what he's saying and I respond to what's being said. But I must say to him afterwards that tone requires that I have to work a little bit harder to listen to what he's saying. So maybe as we develop this culture, and as I say, I think that's going to work better in the schools. We can teach, because one of the things about, I don't know about you, but if you say certain things to parents is one, stop cross your face. I don't encourage you to say anything else. you know, or a shoe thrown in your direction or something like that. So as we culture it, as we are going to build the culture, as we're going, I think the schools have a lot of that responsibility, the church does too. And we encourage them to speak out and give them the opportunities to do so. And at the same time, teach them how to do that at home, such that hopefully it's not perceived as rude and out of order and out of your place and that sort of thing, you know? So as you talk about the culture, I'd love to do that culture, but you know, we need to be a little clear who the we is that's going to put that culture.
The truth about it is that there's a saying that says, the man that move a mountain start by moving the smallest of stone. The slavery was not abolished because there was a big crowd. Slavery was abolished because somebody who was tenacious, you know, that level of tenacity, that level of will with a small group evolve into a mass or a massive group where persons start to push forward. Now, this is a platform on which that culture has started. It can evolve from here to where we want it to be. The thing about it is that the more we use platforms like these to give onus to creating that culture, is the more it will happen. When we talk about we are involved, society, all the agents or agencies in society are a part of this we. So the church, the home, the school, the social, all. Dr. Carr have a book that is out. It still takes a family, which is, give me 1 second. Let me.
And while Dr. Emil, yeah, you're back.
No, it's all right. You can go ahead. Just let me plug this in quickly.
All right. So while Dr. Emil plugs in the computer, we don't want you to leave us. Not yet, because this discussion is going, and it could go on all night. But unfortunately, we don't have all night. We are a bit running out of time, but I'm hearing advocates for change. I'm hearing that coming out, and I hear you calling it out. And that is very excellent in my opinion, because someone needs to call it out. We need to call the spade a spade. And if we're building tenacious women, how do these mothers who are not tenacious themselves build those girls? How do these mothers who, they don't eat well, they are not as educated, they're suffering from some mental illness because the home is very unstable. They're not making enough money, the boyfriend abusive, the community that they live in is not so conducive. How do they build these tenacious women for change? How do they build the girls that we are advocating for and the ones that we need in society?
Now, it is important to accept that it is a challenge. But having said that, do we put our hands at our side and give up to say that it can't be done? Or do we as a society now rally around the critical part? Now, here is where I would say men need to play a critical role, and men need to start speak up and be very proactive. I was listening just today on the radio where they were having the discussion about dancehall music has impacted violence in the society at different levels, and the Broadcasting Commission, and then an interview on the radio with Dion Jackson Miller and Derek Wilkes, and they were saying the conversation need to change. This is where the conversation piece need to change. This is where we need to, if dancehall music can be a catalyst for violence, then here is where we need to start speak up. And here is where I would say men need to play a critical role, and men need to start speak up. And here is where the critical part is. Do we as a society now rally around the critical part? Now, here is where I would say men need to play a critical role, and men need to start speak up. And here is where the critical part is. Do we as a society now rally around the critical part? Now, here is where we who are well thinking, who understand what is needed to bring about this change, need to start to allow our voices to be. It is going to take long. There can be no time limit placed on it. Just like someone who is grieving, you can't place a time limit for them to grieve. Here is where we know as a society who is grieving and has been grieving for an extended period of time, we need in the churches, small groups, we need to start creating different societal dynamics so that these dynamics can become a part of the public conversation, can become a part of the small group conversation, can become a part of the conversations on the veranda and different places, so that conversation can start evolve from there to different areas of society. That's how change will happen. It is not going to happen overnight. It is not going to happen suddenly.
Something that I really want to add, just kind of listening and having something kind of percolate in the back of my mind. Perhaps one of the things that we also need to do is stop othering people. We talk about those people who don't do this or don't know how to do that or can't do that. So there's this deficit kind of mindset. There's this deficit language. We start at the point at what they can't do or don't know, rather than welcoming these people into spaces, or parents, you know, or neighbors, and say, all right, what is it that you can help us with? Because, you know, you have many schools who utilize the parents, the skills that they have. And then you find that you start to have a conversation with these parents now, and they start to talk about, well, you know, so I have a little problem with a pitney here or whatever. And then you start to have a conversation around that, rather than you coming in as the educated one, telling them what to do because you're more educated and whatnot. But changing the language so that we're not othering people, so that they don't feel as if somehow they are inferior because they don't know or they can't, and we are more superior. It has to be, it's not us and them, it's we. We all have to live right here in Jamaica, and until we create those spaces where they are as much a part of the fabric of this society, then nothing is going to change in that culture that we talk about.
I absolutely agree with you. And I think that, so because we're talking about creating a culture, so I love that idea of getting parents together and just giving an opportunity to talk about some of the things that is going on, just being able to themselves be encouraged to talk, be encouraged to ask for help, be encouraged to and doing this often enough. You know, within the churches, within the schools, often enough. For those of us who are active in communities and their community centers, doing things like this often enough and allowing them to come out, inviting them to come out to hear, to air what they have to say what they want to say, to feel free, to have these women say, look, let them know that, look, you can come and talk about all of these things and how we can knock heads to come up with solutions and to help. I totally agree. But just wanting that when we leave here, that we're clear that, okay, so if we're going to create a culture, it will take this and it will take this. It's going to take some small group meetings. It may take some meetings in some churches. It's going to take we have pastors here, we have educators here. We're leaving here within our mind with a plan that we're going to implement and not just talk about it. Do you understand what I'm saying? Leaving with a blueprint. Yeah, we probably can't get a whole big blueprint right now tonight, you know, but not just leaving having had a conversation, but leaving thinking, okay, what can I do tomorrow? What step can I take with what I have to make a difference tomorrow? You know, when I leave here, you know, do I touch base with my child is still in high school? Do I touch base with the guidance and say, you know, I was a part of something last night and this happened, and I was wondering, is there some way we could do something, you know, just so that when we leave here, we know that we are the we that are going to need to put legs to all that we're talking about to make the impact, to have something change.
So we are looking at really reframing the narrative.
Yes.
So we reframe that existing narrative so that when we leave here, we understand what it is that is needed.
I don't think it will happen overnight, Dr. Emil, but what I think is that
definitely not.
But what I do think is that, like most persons on the platform has said, there needs to be, we need to start somewhere. There needs to be this central focus on the need to have voices heard, expectations, and we need to create those spaces. And I'm sitting here reflecting on every major change that has happened. The persons initially had to go back to homes or societies where they were not yet at that place of acceptance that this is supposed to be the new norms. It took time. And so I believe that we have to use up all the persons of influence, have to use up, there has to be a concerted commitment. So all the spaces, the social spaces, the mainstream media, the other small entities, whether they be churches, communities, until we all get it, until we all understand what's happening. PTA meeting, you do a little role play, whatever it is, but whatever way people will understand, that is how we have to take it to them, because there has got to be a change in our society. So I say little by little, brick by brick, endorsing Dr. Kerr's book, It Still Takes a Village to Raise a Child. Everybody has a responsibility, and we're not stopping until we break down those walls.
I mean, we are running out of time, but we have to take at least 2 questions from our members or participants who are on. We have to at least take 2 questions. Sean J left and I didn't get to take his question. And Andrew Blake, you have been making very good points in the chat. I do see them. Child development is a collective effort, and bringing the parents into the conversation, having mentorship programs, and our boys and girls mentorship parents. We need to mentor the parents as well, of course. And Sharika, I see you putting in the chat. I mean, the chat is just going. So panelists, if you can pay attention to the chat as well and respond. But Carleen Brown, she has her hand up, and I really don't want her to leave, like how I lost Sean J. Carleen, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. One of the things I was thinking just now, as I listened to you guys speak, I remember just last week, there was this young man who hung himself at 12-year-old. And at that point, I said, I have to find a way to go into the schools, and I need to talk to the children. I have got to give what I have. I mean, like at the devotion or something, because they gather there, or a few of them, but I've got to speak to them because they're more than this. It doesn't have to get to that place. And I said, no, I can't stay in it. What am I supposed to do? Who do I talk to go into the school and to be able to do this? That's one of the thoughts I had, right? We have got, another thought I had just now too, was I remember before I became a Christian, we were invited to church, and one of the things that they did, they would have little stuff like food, and they talk to you about the food that they prepare, whomever it is that would present, and it gets us involved. And then they started to invite us to other meetings, and as they invite us to other meetings, it dealt with my mind, dealt with my heart, because we're talking around food, and we're communicating, and it's just easy to communicate. I think that each individual here could do something like that, and we could stay in touch and do something bigger.
As someone, Dr. Fraser, was it you who put it in the chat? Volunteer. We need to maybe take away some of that television time and go there, to go where we need to go, be there, call it out, and be agents for change, advocates for change. Time is definitely running out on us.
Can I
Victor.
say, just before you close, I think it is very difficult to get into these schools to help, though. I think it is extremely difficult, to really go in, and a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of going around. It is really, really not easy. So many times we try to give assistance to so many schools, but it is not the easiest of things.
I see Dr. Fraser shaking her head. She's saying no, Dr. Emil. She's saying no. So we're going to have to work that out. That's going to be on a different platform.
Personal experience.
Yeah, that's going to have to be on a different platform. We're going to have to work that out. So Dr. Hilton Fraser, Dr. Emil wants to come into the school. So we need to get him there. He's having difficulty. Let us assist him to get there. Dr. Victor, my
Yes, thank you.
co-moderator. I mean, how wonderful this has been. I'm so sorry we have to come to an end.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I mean, just listening listening to someone that was about last week, the person did say that I think it's hard time. I think this statement is going to Dr. Hilton Fraser, not just a statement, and also just to provoke something in you as an educator alongside Dr. Tomlinson, says it is the time has come and it is now that our educators, they need to leave that beautiful offices that is so highly, acid, and start moving into the communities in order to be able to reach our vulnerable societies, especially the children. Please.
You're right. That's a whole other
Fraser, please take this message back to all the educators. Dr. Tomlinson, please make note of that.
Yes.
Become the advocate.
I totally agree. Go where the high heels can't go. Dr. Hilton Fraser, I'm sure you will take that mantle because I know you are serious about the business of education. Lady Lorraine Rainford, I thank you so much for coming. You indeed are very serious about nutrition. And of course, if we can't feed our bodies well, then we will not be mentally well, right, Dr. Emil and Dr. Tomlinson? We will not be mentally stable to be well educated and be prepared for all the challenges and the journey of society. I do thank you all for being here. This was wonderful. I didn't want it to end, but we have to pause for now. So we are pausing for now, and we will return definitely with some more. And we're going to make way now for our second panel discussion, where we will hear much more on our theme, Building Tenacious Women as Catalysts for Change and Pioneers for the Future. Thank you, everyone, for being with panel 1. Lady Bishop.
Thank you, Lana Gay Franklin.
Most welcome.
For moderating panel 1, and thank you, Dr. Chiana. I'd like to recognize the president of Rehoboth Basic School, Mr. Stephen Hanson, welcome. And also my friend Elvis Beckford, who is joining us from the USA, and other persons from the US and Canada. I know that there's a time difference. I will now hand over to Miss Rochelle Stevenson and also Dr. Chiana to moderate panel discussion 2.
And thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. All this energy and this passion as we look at the sub-team, Building Tenacious Women as Catalysts for Change and Pioneers for the Future. And for panel 2, we have with us Dr. Vivian Carr, who will be looking at positive parenting, St. Anne Parish Manager for Child Protection and Family Services Agency, Andrew Blake. For legal framework, we have Anne-Marie Bishop, attorney, barrister, mediator, trainer, HR consultant. We have online Corporal Damian Hammond, and we'll be looking at the role of the JCF. And Paul Hines, are you online? Just checking. Conflict Management and Resolution, certified mediator and trainer. Mr. Hines, are you here, sir? Just checking. And at this time, we're gonna for each presenter, starting with Dr. Vivian Carr. Just a brief introduction and opening remarks. Dr. Carr.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Stevens. I really appreciate the opportunity to share. All right, so I know persons have been doing very brief background, so you would have heard, I'm not so sure if you're aware, the other members of the audience. I'm the president of the Caribbean Graduate School of Theology. And so we're partnering with Bishop Foundation, Bishop Law Foundation, and the Kiwanis Club to present tonight's presentation. In fact, we have been asked, a number of us, to focus on different areas. And so my task is to look at parenting. You'd have heard mention of a book which I've written recently, and it has to do with It Still Takes a Village. And as we look at the role of parents, we need to recognize that parents can't parent alone. It's going to take the village. But as we share with parents how it is that they need a parent, I think that will help. So we look at the fact that you have that child, and this is both man and woman, right? So the baby would have been from 0, let's look at it developmentally now, right? So we look at a child who's between the age of, say, 0 to 3 years old. And what's critical for that child is that they develop what we call healthy attachment. So we talk about positive parenting. And so the child needs to be provided with the basic things in life. Yes, Maslow's hierarchy of needs: food, water, shelter, safety. It's important that the child has that keen and carefully developed attachment to the primary caregivers, we call it in psychology. Then you move further, the older child, the one who now begins to go to school. That child is learning the academics, learning how to interact with the peers, even the young child we're talking about, from say age 4 until say, take it about age 10. And so they're learning how to do the maths, the English, to be competent, to learn that they can do things, to master the various things that they're taught. And so it's the parents' role to ensure that they get the equipment, the tools that they need to do that, and to be exposed to the church. We spoke about the role of the church because it's important for moral development. So when you have a strong foundation, the attachment to parent, you have them learning about themselves and appreciating themselves and the society, the community in which they're part of, then they'll know who they are, they're better grounded. You look at the child who's older, moving now into the teenage years, talk about this girl. This child is going to be having to be prepped for the wonderful puberty experience. And I say wonderful, I remember, I've known girls who looked forward to this. And when it actually came, you're like, oh, wow, it's a lot of pain and all of those kinds of things. But it is the role of especially the mothers to prep that girl child to expect this, to know how to take care of the body, because there are going to be so many things that comes along with that. And then, of course, with puberty and the period, the menstrual cycle, comes the possibility of pregnancy. STIs and, boys being attracted to them and all of that. So it's learning and teaching them how to navigate that path. And as they get older and the older men begin to take interest, how it is that they navigate that. Earlier, we heard about the girl children, even some of those who are in high school, being picked on, being rubbed on by men, older men. So how do you navigate that as a female, as a girl growing up? So it's a duty of both the mother now and the father to teach them that, in fact, it is healthy, it's okay for men to be attracted to you, but it's how it is that you respond and how it is that you are able to keep focus, stay in school and do well. So in fact, you can get into adulthood, safely. So just wanted to just very quickly developmental, just say, those are the critical things. Once you have those foundations being laid, the child knows who, she is, and can, in fact, navigate that space, communicate effectively, then you have a very good foundation on which to build. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Carr. And this shows that everything is integrated, because you even mentioned taking care of the body. And that is a point that we had discussed earlier in panel 1. And at this time, I'm inviting Andrew Blake, St. Andrew Parish Manager, Child Protection and Family Services Agency, for your introduction and opening remarks, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you can hear me clearly. Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this conversation as we focus on recognizing our young ladies across the world, actually. And is one thing I like to say in my capacity, even before assuming the responsibilities of parish management in the Child Protection and Family Services Agency is that our young people have become endangered species because they're falling into all kinds of different traps and all kinds of different associations. And I like to look at youths as the type of persons that you must bring yourself to a particular level in an effort to fully understand their world. Because the way in which they look at their world is not how we see their world. And they have a different perception, a different concept, and the associations, for me, plays a significant role in how they form their own worldview and how they form their own understanding. And even in child development, at the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, we pay close attention to the developmental stage. We pay close attention to their associations, because the parent, for me, the home is one of the critical points of development for the child, both educationally and ethically. It's one of the most pivotal points where they associate with the adults in their lives. This is where they learn the manners, as we may say. This is where they learn the ethical steps in how to behave. This is where one would suggest that they learn moral standings. And I'm an advocate for mentoring parents, because when you look at the age group of our parents, you become concerned, because the age group of our parents are children themselves, should be graduating college, university, teachers' colleges, vocational centers, but they are becoming fathers, they are becoming mothers, some are becoming grandmothers, you know, in the society that we now live. So the primary association is the home for me. The secondary association is their educational interaction. The teacher, the classmates, the culture of an institution. And the culture of an institution sometimes is established by the administration. And if the children are so in mind, they will follow that culture. And then for me, the other association that they encounter is when they go out into the world. And now they're faced with the dilemma of making decisions that will either lead to productivity or lead to destruction. And so we find ourselves as adults between a rock and a hard place. How do we transmit our principles so that we can have productive continuing even after we're gone? So I'm happy to be a part of the conversation. I think it's a good conversation to have. I think it is one that should go forward. I don't think it should end when we sign off. I think it is one that should become a part of the, one would say, the curriculum of our schools. That could be stretching it a little bit, but you know, I'll put that out there for whatever it's worth. You know, a part of the curriculum of our schools where we engage our children and we hear from them. Our schools are content driven, yes, and probably we need to shift the paradigm and allow it to become more child-centered in its learning, and not so much the teacher fulfilling the curriculum demands, but also bringing the child into the conversation as to when the curriculum is being developed, so that the child's voice is a part of that process and the child understands that, okay, this curriculum is centered on me and I own it. I have ownership. So therefore, it's not about the teacher coming just lecturing, but I am a part of the teaching learning process. Let me, if you follow me, I take charge. Let me stop here.
Thank you so much for your contribution, Sir Blake. And I now invite Corporal Damian Hammond for his opening remarks and introductions. Thank you. Corporal Hammond? I know I saw you on a bit earlier. Let me check.
I am here.
Awesome. Hearing you now.
All right. I am not. I'm trying to do something here.
So Corporal Hammond is getting himself organized, and I just want to.
All right. I'm here. I'm not certain if Miss Madam Bishop had alerted you guys. I'm not in Jamaica at the moment. I'm overseas. It's a bit cold where I am, and so I'm trying to keep as warm. So you might see my head a bit covered. So my apologies for that. Please, Madam Moderator, please accept my apologies, and also the persons who are online. Though I'm on leave, I still avail myself to the process to be a part of the discussion. Madam Bishop is a partner of mine in the domestic violence movement. That's one of my areas. As a constabulary, we are in the business of protecting our children who forms part of our vulnerable group. And in celebrating 10th anniversary of the International Day of the Girl Child, I took the opportunity to be a part of the discussion and to add my voice and to see how best I can agitate and sensitize our citizenry as it relates to the work of the JCF and our continuous work in the area of protecting our children. And also, you know that we work very closely with the CPFSA because they are one of our partners in this regard. So that's until we get into the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Corporal Hammond. And I'll now call on Anne-Marie Bishop to give her introduction and opening remarks. Okay, not hearing you just as yet.
Good evening, everyone. Ms. Rochelle and Dr. Chiana, to all my co-presenters for panel 2. I'm Anne-Marie Bishop. And about 2 weeks ago, I was doing some research and came across the fact that today would be celebrated by UNICEF as International Day of the Girl Child. And straight away, I began to coin an idea to partner with the Caribbean Graduate School of Theology and the Kiwanis Club of the Garden Parish to do this session. And of course, it was planned and organized in less than a week. And I reached out to Dr. Emil first, shared the idea with him, and we coined the sub-team together. Dr. Carr was, as usual, very excited about my ideas and willing to partner with me because, you know, I'm crazy like that. I would just be here sitting and come up with an idea. I reached out to Mr. Blake, who I met in May, who partnered with us for the health fair. And he, you know, under pressure from me, couldn't say no. He agreed almost immediately. Same thing with Corporal Hammond, who is overseas, you know, because they know that I don't take no for an answer, and I'm usually very persistent. And the other presenters in part 1, about 2 or 3 of them I have not met. I reached out to other persons in our network and got their names, and I reached out to them and they agreed. And it was a lovely, informative presentation for panel discussion 1. I've learned a lot. So I really appreciate the discussion thus far. My role is to look at the legal framework in terms of domestic violence, because at the end of the day, we are seeing in the court system, Corporal Hammond and I, we are seeing in the court system the negative impact of DMV on our children. They're the ones that really, they're the ones who are really suffering. And although we're focusing on girls, it really is gender neutral. And as my colleague, Mr. Blake, will explain the role of the CPFSA and being in the court system, we see the children, we see the breakdown of the family structure. We see children being charged for various offenses. We hear the news daily, children murdering children, rape in the schools, the violence that has been happening for the past 2 terms in the schools. And we're here to not just to have the discussion, but to present and solutions and recommendations to the table, and I agree with all the presentation thus far that it takes a village to raise a child, and we have to approach it from holistically in terms of the church. Parenting begins in the home. We have to deal with the school. We have to deal with the community, and everybody has a role to play. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie Bishop. Indeed, it's an integrative approach and each one has a role to play. I'm currently checking again for Paul Hines. I'm not sure if you have subsequently joined Mr. Hines. And if not, I'm just gonna segue the car. Parenting. During panel one, that's one of the recurring themes that kept on coming in over and over, the role of parenting and positive parenting. Now, how can positive parenting help to develop girls into being women of agents of change?
Okay, so we maybe want to look at what positive parenting is. And positive parenting is speaking to that approach which looks at what the needs of the child are, especially the girl child. And so you're proactive. And as you're proactively providing for the needs of the child and being there to support the child, you're also ensuring that when the child does wrong, you are not going to be disciplining them in a harsh manner. You heard Madam Bishop spoke just now about domestic violence. So it's not going to be negative, the battle bruise and all that kind of thing that we do in Jamaica, but it's going to be positive. The positive parenting, ensuring that you're guiding that girl child right. So there will be times that the child does wrong, but how it is that you allow them to learn from failures so that as they fall down, they get back up again. Yes. And so they become, that's the whole matter of tenacity. You stick with it, you're persistent. Yes, it didn't work one way, they start going to school. We spoke about that earlier. They may not be doing as well as we anticipated. How do we encourage them and continue to motivate them so they don't fall behind? And that if they do fall behind, they're able to get back up again. So the whole process of developing from that of a baby into adulthood, navigating all the various challenges. We speak of, well, in psychology, we speak of Erik Erikson, right? And we know that he looks at the stages of development. And so at the early stage, we spoke about the healthy attachment. And once that is formed, we know that that will help the child. When we move to the child doing well in school, we know that that will help them so that by the time they get to PEP, GSAT stage, it was PEP, GSAT, now PEP, they will do well and they'll get to go to the school that they want to go to, because that will affect their career choices, even how well they end up being in society. Because when it is that they are properly prepared and effectively parented positively, then they will be able to take their place. They'll know what careers they want to be involved in because they'll learn what their purpose is. And you know, there's a verse in the Bible which says, like, the arrow is in the bow, then it's the responsibility of the family, of the parent, to guide that child in the direction. So the child needs to learn, what is my purpose? Why am I here? Based on that knowledge of why you're here, then you move towards that. And when you move towards that, then you'll be able to impact lives and to become agents of change. You know, catalysts, being pioneers, yes? So that you will be, the child, the young girl will go into adulthood, being assured. The parent needs to allow the child. Positive parenting means that you allow the child to have a voice. The child will have an opinion. So you allow them to share what their opinion is, so that when it is that they are put in a space where they are expected to lead and to be that guide, then they'll be comfortable doing that because they would have been excellent communicators. Yes, and so as we positively parent our girls, they will then end up being adults who can become agents of change.
Okay. And one of the things that Andrew Blake would have mentioned earlier, he spoke about children having children. Mm-hmm. How do you think that impacts the stages of development when instead of maneuvering all these stages all the way down, you have children having children? Do you think it has an impact?
It would definitely have an impact. And this is where, and we keep talking and you'll hear it over and over, it takes a village. In the olden days, when you have that extended family situation, the mother was, or teenage pregnancy is nothing new, especially in Jamaica. Because even when I check back to my grandparents, many of them had their children from they were 16 and 14. Yeah. And so that has always been the case, but they always had the support. So the grandmother would be there to teach her how to hold the baby, how to bathe the baby, how to do all of these things. Yes. And so as we have the support of the extended family, of the community, yes, because we know about the concept of godparents, right? And that's just what they are. Ensure that the moral development of the child takes place. They go to church. If the parent even can't go, they go to church and live in with somebody and they go back home or to do whatever else they have to do. So the child is not left unprotected. Yes. And so even as we're having our inexperienced mother, this is where the whole thing of mentorship came in. The Bible tells us again, the older women are to teach the younger ones how to love their children. You ever hear anything like that? Yes, because it's not easy to love them. It takes a lot to love a child. And so it is going to be the whole concept of mentorship, the role of the church. It has to be that village coming together, seeing where the gaps are and helping. Yes, that's what's going to make the difference, really.
Thank you very much, Dr. Carr. Dr. Chiana, you have anything you want to raise just here, my co-moderator?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Stevenson. Dr. Carr, in your opening remark, you mentioned that parenting is a combination of both the father and the mother. As we look within our context, we are, if not, I stand to be corrected, 90% of our homes, 90%, I mean, even during the first panel discussion, it was also alluded to that the issue of single mothers. So 90% of our home, it's governed, managed by single mothers. And you also alluded to the fact that prepping also is important as we go about nurturing the girl child. I want to find out from you, if you don't mind sharing with us, do the father, do they play any role in prepping our young girls? And if that is true, please, can you share with us your thoughts regarding that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that question. I smiled as you mentioned the stats because I work with the Planning Institute of Jamaica, and from I was there to about now, it's about 40-something% that's single-headed homes, right? The challenge is that there are some homes which have men, but they're not as effective. Yeah, that's just the reality of it. And so the burden tends to be on the females, especially that of the caregiving. However, you would have heard me mention earlier, especially when you were talking about the child who's going through the teenage years, girls, they need the fathers there to build their self-esteem. They need to know you look pretty and it's not sexual. So when they go out and there's a boy who says, oh, you look good, they already know that. So they don't get all frightened and run to go in bed with them, yes? And so the critical nature and the importance of family and the father becomes a part of the conversation. You would have heard about the fatherless crew and all, even the boys, so it affects them negatively. So yes, it's important for the family to remain together. I tell you another thing I discovered during my dissertation. I actually looked at child sexual abuse. And what we found is that when there is a father, a male in the home, hello, please, when the young man come and knock at the gate, daddy going out there, yes? So the father becomes a protector. So our girls would be more protected and not left out to be harmed, to be injured, because you would have heard Miss Lowe's play. I'm not so sure, I know you're not Jamaican, Dr. Chen, but she's going to call her big brother. Because if there's no daddy and there's a big brother and you're going to interfere with her, she's going to go and get that older male. That's the concept, to be the defender and the protector. So in the absence of the fathers, we call on the bigger brothers, we call on the uncles, we call on the church brothers to help to provide the guidance, especially spiritual guidance, the pastors, etc. And we're saying, yes, it takes two. That's how pregnancy came, right? But we know along the way, along the path, things happen. And so this is again where we say we need other persons who can perform that role of father, that role of protector, that role of provider, because there are some girls who end up, especially in Jamaica, being abused, being taken advantage of because they have needs. And there are some men who will seek to meet those needs and then expect something in return. We need to have responsible men who will see that, yes, there's a need, but not expect anything in return. And so that's what we're looking for as a society, as we're seeking to raise our girls with the fathers. And remember, I need to, for the fathers who are online to hear this and to share with your colleagues, the fact that the relationship has broken down with the mother doesn't mean it has broken down with the child. If it's a visiting relationship, still look for your child, still take care of your child. You don't need to be with the mother to take care of the child. Yes. And so although you may not be present in the home physically, we're saying men get involved, take care of your girls, protect your girls, because if they get pregnant, you're going to also have to help with that burden.
But if I can just weigh in here, one major thought that comes to my mind as Doc spoke is developing the emotional intelligence of our men. Because what you find is that men don't know how to express themselves in a positive way. And so they turn to violence. And so we have domestic disputes and issues that really don't have to turn violent. Because as Doc said, you don't have to be with the mother to have a joint understanding as how the child should be raised. And I share a story with you. In one of my sessions with a family, the daughter went to the mother and asked if she could do a sleepover. And the mother said no. So she immediately went to call the father, seeking his permission. They weren't together, seeking his permission. But mommy only sent a text message with the word no. And when daddy got the call, because there was this I'm not together, but there's an understanding. When daddy saw the text from mommy that says no, and the daughter called, daddy says no. and then after, daddy called mommy and said, what's happening? And mommy explained the situation. Of course, he agreed totally with the stance that the mother had taken. So it's looking at the emotional side of men. And men are extremely emotional. As much as we try to be hard as concrete, if you cut into us, you find that we are sometimes more emotional than women. And that's why men turn to violent means of expressing their emotions and finding positive methods of releasing that stress or that encounter. So I just wanted to add that, because in the home, Doc, the father can be there, but not there. And the mother ends up with no support. And therefore you have a nuclear family with a single parent essence. And you end up in the same cycle of mommy becoming father and mother. And all respect to women and all respect to the strides that they have made, and we are recognizing our ladies today. But it has been said that women can't necessarily raise men, because there is a difference in how the methodology is seen and the perception. And so you need the presence, not just the physical presence, but you need the presence of the father, the voice of the father in the ears of the child, so that the child can understand that there is a balance within the equation.
I'm so happy you mentioned that, because we spoke about discipline earlier, because one of the things I'm a parent, right? And I found one of the most difficult things I had to deal with was having had that child, cared for that child, breastfed that child, and then having to discipline that child. It's one of the hardest things you'll ever have to do. Daddy who never had to go through all of that is easier. When the voice rolls, the child knows this is serious business. You understand? And so the father's role in the parenting of the child, of the girl child especially, is so critical. I guess from him, she'll also learn how to have a relationship with a male, which is non-sexual, which is genuine, care, and no strings attached. except that I want what's best for you. And that's so important because it also affects their long-term relationships, you know. When they're going to marry, they won't think as the man looks at them or compliments them, he wants to go to bed. Yes. And so unless they learn all these cues from their fathers, the presence of the father, whether physically at home or just being present in the child's life, then they won't know how to navigate that space of male intimate relationship. You know, and so that's important.
And this is where CPFSA comes in, because I can wait in here because we're dealing with the family. Remember now, about 2 to 3 years before, it was the Child Development Agency.
Mm-hmm.
So the core center was focused on children. Now that name has been expanded in its meaning to Child Protection and Family Services, where we're looking keenly now at integrating ourselves within the entire aspect of the family, because you can, for example, teach the child all the necessary tips and steps how to be a productive adult. But at the end of the day, the child goes back home. And the child goes back home to a culture that has been created. Now, how does the child separate what I have learned in my secondary interaction to what I am faced with in my primary interaction to form that tertiary interaction or association where I become an adult of productivity? So the Child and Family Services Agency, we are seeking to infuse ourselves in that conversation with the parents and to see how we can train the parents to be parents and train the parents how to parent their children so that the children can be, because what we have found out is that some of our parents suffer from post-trauma. They themselves are suffering from sexual abuse, domestic violence, viewing tragic and traumatic death of another parent at the hand of one parent, having 2 parents in custody, or one in the graveyard and one in prison. So they themselves are suffering from that psychological trauma. And some of these parents are suffering from the fact that they're a parent because they were sexually assaulted. And every time they see the child, they see the assault. So how do you now bring that into the conversation to create this positive thinking, this positive demonstration, this positive outcome, so that I can put aside the fact that my child is a result of a sexual assault, but I have to love that child and hate the assault. How do I balance that?
Yeah, so you're speaking about family therapy, and you're speaking about, as regards to the parent, them overcoming and healing from that which has happened. And so there's no other way around it. If it is that you are a victim of sexual abuse and this results in a child being born, of course, we know we could have prevented that if it was reported, but many times they can't even report it, yes, because of the culture and the environment in which they are. So here it is, you have this parent now having to parent this child who is a result of their hurt. It has to be that they have to go through therapy. And so, yes, you work with the children, but you have to work with the family. When the family heals and is therefore able to move past the hurt, then they're able to love this child. Yes, who did not ask to be born, but is there. And so it's through the process of therapy, healing, forgiveness. So the spiritual guide is going to be critical there too. The role of the church. Let's not forget the role of the church in the whole process, because forgiveness is a spiritual act and it's not easy. So at CJC, Caribbean Graduate School of Theology, we train Christian counselors. And what we're saying is we're mixing the psychology with the Bible and the church work. And we're saying we are going to be there to walk with you as you journey through parenting. Yes? So it's not just telling you, okay, this is what the psychologists say, but it is, how am I going to pray with you? How am I going to guide you towards forgiving this person who has hurt you? You spoke just now about what we call the intergenerational cycle of violence. So my mother used to box me down and kick me down. When I have you, I box and kick you down too because I'm still alive. Yes? And so the culture continues, and we know it's destructive. The society in which we live, Jamaica, is a very violent society. And as you mentioned, the different witnessing of either the parent being killed I worked in prison ministry, so I know the stories, yes? I work especially with the women, female prison, where they might have been incarcerated because they killed the father and the children are not out there. And so part of our role as when we go in as a church is to not just minister to and get the parent or the mother to get saved, but to also think about what about that child? Is that child being taken care of? Who is their supervisor? Because we don't want them to end up in prison either, you know. So it's how it is that as a society, we band together to take care of the different needs that are identified. So the mother is incarcerated, the father is dead, there has to be an auntie, cousin. This is where CPFSA comes in, yes? The child might end up in a home, place of safety. The society has to be structured in such a way that we end the cycle of violence and that we protect those who might have been affected by the healing process of counseling, therapy, being able to move on from that experience. Because if we don't do that, we'll continue to just reap that which we're seeing.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Carr. We're talking about the cycle of violence. And the chat has quite a few comments, but before we look at those comments, Andrew Blake, can you tell us some of the services that the agency offers to parents and children? Your microphone went.
Hearing me now. Yes. Of course, Doc alluded to one point, the residential care, and within there is now a significant move in creating assessment facilities, assessment areas, being staffed by psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers, that basically looks at assessing the children mentally and cognitively, seeing where they are, see what's happening, and developing an appropriate treatment plan for them. We also do investigations into alleged child abuse. We have our investigation unit that once a report is made to the National Children's Registry, as you know, the National Children's Registry now is a part, is one entity. First, it was separated. Now we have merged. So we have the Child Protection and the Family Services Agency, and we have the National Children's Registry that falls under the Ministry of Education. And we are one in one, yes? And so when we receive reports, we have the investigation unit that goes out and conduct the investigation into the allegations that are made. And if the allegations prove to be true, then we activate the other systems that are available. I will hasten to say that we launched last year the 211. Now the 211, very easy to remember. You don't need credit on your phone. A child can pick up a cell phone and dial 211 if they're being abused, bullied, threatened, anything that they believe is interfering with their right as a human to safety. Yes, they can pick up the cell phone, no credit needed, dial 211, and it goes straight to the operator. Since 211 has been launched, we have received over 6,000 reports. Since 211 has been launched, 6,000 reports, and it goes up. It goes up every day. So that's a number that I believe now would be basically irrelevant if we should get the current figure today. We also offer foster care, where we will try to place the child with a family that loves them and that will express love to them. And now foster care, of course, is not a permanent thing. Foster care is a temporary housing situation where the child can be there for a night, can be there for a week, can be there for a month. It all depends on what is happening in the situation. The court can also meet a fit person order where the child can stay with that foster parent for a time period. We also offer what is called the family reintegration. And the family reintegration is linked to the institution. So we have institution, family reintegration. And the main purpose of that desk is to get the child out of the residential care facility and get them back into the family. So the officer works very closely with the family, works very closely with the institution in the whole treatment process, and see how best we can get the child back into that family dwelling, that family situation. We also have our court officer that represents us at court and does the reports that are necessary to ensure that the child's best interest is protected. We have our adoption officer, our adoption desk that works closely with the adoption board and the adoption coordinator to ensure that children that are ready for adoption, we have tried to find parent, we have tried to find family, and no one is there. No one is responding to the ads placed in the paper. The 6 weeks has elapsed. No one is coming out. We seek now to bring that child to a family that will nurture and love them until they get to adulthood. And of course, you know, adoption is a legal process. So that goes through the necessary processes. So there's another program that I'll mention quickly, and it's called the Transitional Living Program. Well, the Transitional Living Program deals with our children that are in residential care facilities. And when they get to age 16, we start the career counseling with them, and we work closely with them because now at 18, they're exiting government care, as we would suggest. So we don't want to just, oh, you're 18, so you need to go. You know, we want them to go with something. So in this program, we send them to university. We send them to vocational training institutions. We find boarding. Sometimes we rent a particular room for them for a period of time. They get a job and they can sustain themselves. Within the program, they go through different counseling, life skills training. And so at the end of the day, when they exit care, when they exit the residential care facilities, they are equipped enough to stand on their own 2 feet and don't become a statistic within the country, but become a productive member of society. We do counseling. Parents that come in, we do family counseling. We have our family support officer that deals with vulnerable families. They work closely with them, get the birth certificate, passport, get them immunized, dental care, eye testing, get them glasses if they need it. I was in a meeting today with our CEO, and we're talking also about teaching them how to operate heavy duty vehicles so they can get a license to drive tractor and trailers across the countries. And we even sometimes work with them on the work and travel program. So we get them involved in that as well. And they go overseas and they get the exposure, they get the experience. So it's a number of things that the Child Protection and Family Services Agency does. And we have a team of persons from head office right across the island, a team of social workers that work assiduously to ensure that we meet as best as we can the needs of these families that come on our desk. And I can tell you the ideal ratio for a social worker and caseload is, I think the international standard is 30 or 50, thereabout. Right now we have officers carrying 235. We have officers carrying, when I was involved in investigation unit before becoming the parish manager, I carried a caseload of 300 plus. So you find that we need more persons on board. We need more volunteers, persons that will open their homes and say, I want to be a part of this move to nurture. And remember now, when a child comes to the Child Protection Services, they come for a barrage of reasons, a variety of reasons. Sometimes they say, oh, in Ghana homes because they don't have no behavior. Sometimes they're in the facilities because they need care and protection. We found a young man in one of our parishes sleeping under a bridge for how many months? And the reason he's under the bridge is because mommy is with her new guy and there's no space for him in the house. So he needs to go find his way. And this is a 15-year-old young man that should be looking forward to CXCs, should have the protection of a family, looking forward to advance himself academically. He's now looking, where's my next meal? And if the rain falls tonight, where do I sleep? Because the bridge will be flooded. You understand me? So we intervene and we see ourselves as that bridge between the family, the journey, and productivity. And sometimes it doesn't work. I'll admit, sometimes we have some that just can't release that pain, can't release that trauma. Doc spoke about forgiveness, just can't forgive. A young girl that is raped by father, sexually assaulted by uncle, a young man that is buggered by his family member, a young boy that is physically and mentally challenged, and he is 15, but he has the mind of a 3-year-old, and he takes out a piece of chicken, and the mother will put his hand in fire and then treat the hand with rat poison. You know, that type of trauma that they have, sometimes they can't move past it. And then you find the cycle of trauma continuing because they re-traumatize their own children because of the situation that they're coming from. But the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, we seek to come in and we see how best we can work closely with the family, with the children, with our stakeholders, or Dr. Bishop being one of our stakeholders now, seeing how closely we can work together. The church, I saw one person in the chat emphasizing the church. The church is a significant part within the community of stemming some of the violence that we're seeing. And I like when Dr. alluded to the fact that it's more than just preaching the gospel of salvation. It's also getting into the moral compass of these persons, getting into their homes, not just having prayer meetings at the homes, but being a part of the development and saying, okay, we have women's ministry, we have Sunday school, we have men's ministry, we have youth ministry, we have different ministries that can cater, social welfare outreach ministry, that can cater to some of the challenges. And we seek to partner with the churches. We seek to partner with the churches to see how we can work close together to not only keep the family together, but make sure the family is productive. So that is some of the core functions of the CPFSA.
Mr. Blake, thank you so much. That's a lot of information and useful information. We all have a role to play. And I noted that you indicated the 211. You said that was last year, and there are over 6,000 calls since 2021. That's astounding. So of all those calls, how many can you say, that's a guesstimate, have resulted in parents being charged with abuse or other criminal charges? A percentage.
I won't guess because you're dealing with figures, and that's a dangerous avenue when you start to guess percentage. But what I can tell you is that calls that come in, reports that are taken, no matter the parish, no matter where it is dispatched to the investigation unit and investigations are done. And where the police has to come in, the police comes in. One of the things I've learned is that the police will charge when a report is taken. The police will tell that they can't charge because let me tell you, the example I had once is where I literally took the pregnant teen to the police, but the teen refused to give a statement, refused to say who impregnated her. And because of that, the police said their hands are tied. They can't go any further. I can't give this statement because I'm not the one that is pregnant. And I'm not the one that is a witness to the assault. So therefore, when you have that roadblock, we counsel, we encourage, but at the end of the day, you have that person saying, I'm not speaking. And for a variety of reasons. They don't want to get their boyfriend in trouble. They can't bother with the court system, make it stay, is all right, we get past it. And so you have those reasons coming down the steps. And so you are left now with a reported matter, a confirmed matter, but all you can do now is stand where you are because the complainant doesn't want to go any further. I don't know, Bishop can definitely say she's trained in the legal profession, a counselor, not a lawyer. So that's what
If I may just quickly before Ms. Bishop, if I may through your moderator, as you spoke, I thought about my study. Because as I said, I looked at child sexual abuse. And as you said, there are a myriad of reasons. And one of them could simply be not wanting to die, to be killed, right? Because it is a violent society. You have parents, that's the only person who provides. So the breadwinner is there. So I know we're saying charge, and I'm not saying don't charge, but the reality is you have to balance the thing and decide what's best. So we now advocate for the removal of the man from the home and not the child from the home. Yes, we also advocate for, yes, charging, but also ensuring that if he works, he's going to continue to provide, right? So the family continues to be sustained. We know the prisons can't hold all of them if we were ever to charge all of them and lock them up. So it means, how do you now retrain and support this man who has a problem too, or this woman who has a problem, because she might be frustrated. And so that is why she must go ahead. Yes. So we're saying, as we seek to bring solutions, it has to be a win-win situation. Yes, we want to charge, but we also want to bring healing and wholeness to the family, so the family functions normally. Because when you remove the mother or the father, we, the rest of us as Jamaicans, will have to take care of the children. Are we in a position to? Do we have the finances available to do that? You spoke about the caseload. I work with the Ministry of Health when CPSFA was a part of it, CDA. And it's as you say, you work nonstop, because it's a lot that's out there. And we don't have enough hands on deck. I see some persons asking how they can volunteer. You spoke about volunteers. Send them to your website and tell them to sign up to be volunteers.
That's it. You can visit the parish office wherever you live and just indicate that you want to be a part of the process. And the officers there will take your information. Of course, because we're dealing with children, there is a screening process. Okay, we have to be very, very careful with that as well. So you go through the processes, you go through the different documentations being gathered, and then Kingston head office, they do the rest. But you can visit the nearest parish office and you can say, hey, listen, I want to be a part of your foster care program. I want to be a part of this move to introduce these children to a better way of thinking, an alternate thought. I want to bring them from pre-contemplation to contemplation of how they can live a better life. Yeah, I want to introduce them to a moral standpoint, the church. Yeah, I want to introduce them to how to use knife and fork. I want to introduce them to say thank you. I want to introduce them to how to sit around a dining room table, how to sit in a formal setting. I want to introduce them. I remember we had this activity at an institution, not one of our childcare institutions, but one of our educational institutions. And it was more of a luncheon. And I was asked to be a part of it. And they were trying to teach the children how to use knife and fork. And this young man got his meal. I was standing directly over him. And the knife and fork was there. He took up the knife, he took up the fork. I was watching closely. And he literally stabbed the chicken. He stabbed it because he didn't know what to do. So he just took the knife and just rammed it in the chicken. And he said, this is it. And of course, I intervened and I said, no, my friend, this is how you should use it. So these are some of the areas that you can volunteer. Understanding, because what we find is that sometimes persons want to volunteer, but they themselves become culture shocked when the child comes into their home and they want to say, listen, take him back. we have had parents come to our office and leave the suitcase at the door. I said, take him back. We don't want him, right? So you have to understand that you're receiving a child in your home that may not have no kind of social ethics. And they're expecting you now to bring them to that point. Expect resistance. Expect a talk back. Back answer, we call it. Expect them to shove up their shoulder and hiss their teeth. Some would even tell you an expletive. But what is the greater good? What is the greater picture? Is it my emotion that I'm going to now get wrapped up in? Or am I going to see the greater picture where I see a life and I ask the question, what happened? What caused you to be here? This thinking, this position, and I giving up on you, is it continuing the cycle of give up that has happened over the years of your life? Or does someone stick with you? Do I stick with you through the disappointments, through the disagreements, through the back chat, through the hiss me teeth, through the walk away, through the temper tantrums? Do I stick with you because I want to give an alternate worldview than what you have now? So that's what the foster parenting. So if you want to volunteer, you go through the training, but you understand clearly that these are some of the encounters you will have on a day-to-day basis with the child. And you can't just walk back down to the office and say, look here, Mr. Blake, I've had enough. See the Dulcimina here, take him back. I don't want him around me. This boy is mashing up my life. You know, so that's how you can volunteer.
Thank you so much. And in the chat, they said, love them when they are unlovable. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Hilton Fraser. And Anne-Marie Bishop.
Yes, Madam Moderator.
Yes, you are gonna
I'm here listening. You know, Dr. Carr and Mr. Blake have it locked.
Yes.
But go ahead, please.
Yes, you are gonna take us through the charges. What are the orders available under Domestic Violence Act? Because that had come up. Yes, you go to the police station. Yes, the evidence is there, but a report needs to be taken. So what happens?
Well, as Mr. Blake indicated, you have a complainant, but if that person chooses not to make a formal report, there's nothing that Mr. Blake and his team can do. Even the hands of the police are tied, because most cases are against the individual, and that individual, the complainant, as they're called in law, needs to make that report that is taken by a police officer in order for an investigation to be done, in order for somebody to be detained on reasonable suspicion of abuse or be charged for an abuse of a child or a young adult, young person. I'm in the court system, and I recently shared my experience being in court last week with Dr. Carr, where we are seeing the breakdown of the family structure, where you have persons before the court, male and female, the parents, fighting over custody of the child or children. There's dispute as to maintenance, who is paying what and how much they can afford to pay or not pay. And the father is accused of blocking the mother. There's no communication whatsoever. Who suffers? The child. And we see that every week in courts. So we appreciate agencies such as the CPFSA and the work of the Caribbean Graduate School of Theology in terms of counseling intervention and other persons on this platform. But the reality is chaotic homes create chaotic children, and the cycle continues, especially when you have parents who are not equipped and they're not ready to be parents. And hence the reason, even more why we should have the community approach to raising our children. Mr. Blake, I have a question for you. We have Kiwanis in this meeting and other stakeholders. How can we as Kiwanians and charitable organizations who are on this platform assist your organization in some of the programs that you have outlined in a practical way? We know we have to go through the procedure of training and maybe police record checks and so on and so forth, but speak to us as you are the manager for the Centan CPFSA, and we have Kiwanians here and other stakeholders. Let us know exactly how we can help so we can know the way forward and be practical in this discussion.
But one way you can definitely be practical in your approach to assisting is becoming a part of the residential care facilities. Visiting some of those facilities, speaking with the managers, bringing gifts for the children. We have Granville Place of Safety that takes care of mostly our females. You know, they need that motherly connection. You can speak with the manager through the different channels, of course, ensuring that we cover the protocol and adopt a child, not really legal adoption, so to speak, but you go to the facility and say, okay, Mary, you're my child, and I'm going to be walking with you through this process. I'm going to be sticking with you. You may go to the facility and have church service. If the church is so inclined, go there and have a Sunday school, run a Sunday school, you know, start a club, Women of Worth, or young ladies with a purpose, you know, and you start to influence that cognitive thinking in an effort to retrain what has been trained for negative, retrained for positive thinking. You can also partner with us in community events, as we have done, Bishop. We have partnered in community outreach programs. when we go through to community walkthroughs, you come with your legal training, your background, and you advise some of these fathers that stand on the corner and say, listen, I don't need to pay child support because I'm not see my picnic, so I'm not see why I'm feeding the mother money. You can tell that, listen, you will go to prison same way. You know, you can advise some of these fathers that I'm giving her monies every week and no record. So when you go before the court and you say, well, judge, I give him 50,000, and the mother says, lie, you're telling. The judge say, well, where's the record? I don't have one, Your Honor. Well, you don't hear nothing.
And as you said that, Mr. Blake, being in court recently, there was a situation where the lady was saying he did not do anything, but the man had his receipt book and he had a list, and the judge asked him for it and he presented it, you know, through the police officer who gave it to the judge. And she went through the list and confronted the woman, the mother, and she said yes, and there was evidence, and she could not deny that there was a support. Yes. In one case, and I say this to clients all the time, you cannot let the child sign the receipt book, so you do not give the money to the child. So in one case, the father was giving the money to the child instead of to the mother or the aunt, and the judge spoke to him about it because the child, a person under 18 is a child, not an adult, and does not have any legal standing to accept, at least to sign a receipt to say they're accepting $10,000 or whatever the sum is. And that's what I'm saying, that breakdown in the relationship between the parents, they're using it and abusing it and using the child as a weapon against each other. And that's what we're seeing in the court. And what we're also seeing is children who are not able to express their emotions. They have no emotional intelligence. The parents themselves sometimes don't have that either. They are not healing. They have not recovered from the broken relationship. They need the services of Dr. Kyra and her team. They have not moved on, and they use the children as a weapon in the fight, so to speak, between themselves. And therefore that plays out in the school in terms of how the children relate to other children. It affects their academic performance. We see that a lot of our children, because of COVID, being at home, not socializing, some of them were being in abusive relationship. So the cycle continues, but I will say that there's help out there. The Domestic Violence Act is one act that deals with protection order. It deals with occupation order. It deals with their auxiliary order in terms of maintenance. So the application can be brought by a family member. It can be brought by the children themselves. It can be brought by a constable. I have a situation where the young lady, teenager, brought it on behalf of herself and her siblings. And that matter is, is still pending. So a neighbor can bring the application. So there's no need for us to remain silent when we observe or we suspect. We're all prescribed persons under the Child Care and Protection Act. And therefore we have a responsibility, not even a responsibility, a legal duty to make the report to the relevant authorities. We cannot continue to turn a blind eye and ignore the situation. We are seeing the evidence of our silence every day when we listen to the news.
I'm so happy you said that, Ms. Bishop, through you, Madam Moderator, because what can you do to help? Speak about things when you see it not be right. If you have a neighbor and you see the child being left unattended, in need of care and protection, in harm's way, report it. So everyone can be involved, and you have mentioned several ways in which you can be involved. And the church has been increasingly having a lot of programs, as you mentioned, the child care and the facilities. I'm a part of the team. We go out, we take things for the young girls, the place of safety, and we minister to them. Counseling, church service, the works as you outlined, clothes, food, everything. And so we all can be a part of the process.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kyra. And my co-moderator, Dr. Chiano, do you have a question there, sir?
Just quickly for Attorney at Law, Mrs. Bishop, just to find out, for instance, if there is a breach to the said order, are there any consequences, if you don't mind sharing? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chiano, for your question. I will bring in my colleague, Mr. Corporal Hammond. I know sometimes persons don't have any confidence in our judicial system. and based on perhaps their own experience. Some of it is not true, some of it is hearsay information. But the reality is the court and the judicial system is here to serve you. And once the application is made, it can even be made ex parte without the knowledge of the abuser. It's done by affidavit evidence. You can go to an attorney, or you can go to the court's office and any court's office in the parish and make an application. The clerks are there to assist, and they will put the matter before the court. Your application will be heard, and once the judge is satisfied that there's a need for a protection order and or an occupation order, the order will be granted ex parte for 14 days or more. Eventually, that order must be served on the other party, and if there's a breach, Dr. Chiana, the police will investigate and arrest the person without a warrant. That's one example of a time when a police officer can arrest an individual for breaching the protection order without a warrant. And of course, that person has a right to be heard by the court eventually. So there are consequences for breaching the protection order or the occupation order.
Okay, thank you so much, Madam Bishop. Over to you, Madam Moderator.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Chiana. Mr. Hammond, are you still with us, sir?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, we're gonna wrap up just about shortly, but could you just share with us what the process has been like for you in your role, based on what Mrs. Bishop just mentioned?
In my role as a domestic violence center manager in the constabulary, I am based in St. Catherine, Portmore to be exact. We have seen a number of these matters, and domestic violence it's a very touchy subject. It's a very emotionally charged situation, and so we have to deal with the process in a delicate manner. And Miss Bishop mentioned making an arrest, and she will hasten to tell you that to make an arrest is not easy under the Domestic Violence Act, because as the police, you will have to ensure, one, that the act or the order is in effect. Because a number of persons, what we find that there's an order, and the order is not indefinite. So the order has time limits on it. So sometimes you find out when they come, the order is not in effect. The order has expired. And so you will advise them that we can't do anything as it relates to this because the order has expired. And you have to look at the fact that in some situations, even if the order is in effect, you have to look at how the order was breached, because sometimes the victim causes the perpetrator to breach the order. And so
that's absolutely correct. That's why I'm shaking my head.
And so you would have to look at that, and you have to balance everything and to be fair in what you're doing, and to really execute as per the court order. We have had so many situations where children are involved in domestic violence situation. They become a victim by they experiencing it and also witnessing what has taken place in the home with mother and father. And so that is why we really look at partnering with our agencies and look into counseling. Counseling is a massive part of domestic violence. And the act is really tailored somewhat towards that, if you really look into it and understand it. And what I try to do in a matrimonial situation is really, Miss Bishop, refer the persons to the Supreme Court, where the Matrimonial Causes Act will kick in, and it has a number of other elements to it that will really assist persons in the matrimonial situation. But I know the conversation relating to the church and counseling, but I am not very keen, and this is just my position, on pastoral counseling in domestic violence. I have a challenge with it because domestic violence and mediation does not work all the time, especially in an intimate partner situation. It might work in a family violence situation, but when it comes on to intimate partner, what I note is that when you're getting pastoral counseling, the counseling is geared towards keeping them together to work it out. And you will get the feedback when you do follow that they are very uncomfortable, but they will go through the process, not to seem to be rude or what have you. But I am not necessarily keen on pastoral counseling when it comes on to domestic violence that involves children, the family, really. Because right now I have a family, the children have suffered some trauma from it. And those two girls are in counseling, is working. One parent is not pulling with the process, but the other is. But the real thing that I'm happy about is that the girls are really benefiting from the counseling. And so as a force, we continue to work assiduously. As I spoke about earlier about our children falling in our vulnerable group, and we must look out for them. I also work in the school system where I see a number of these things. And persons alluded to it earlier about communication. We need to begin to communicate with our children. We need to have a listening ear. I spoke to a gentleman today, and I said to him, do you think you are a father where your son can come to you and say just about anything to you? He paused because he was not sure. We have to provide that relationship or that opportunity then, for lack of a better word, for our children can come to us freely, knowing that even if they make a mistake and they will be maybe chastised for it, but at least they're comfortable enough to come to you as a parent and to share with you. But many children will not, because many of us as parents talk about traumas that we have endured, and so I guess we become numb to a number of things. I don't know, but we have to begin to provide the avenue for our children to come and to share with us some deep personal things, because they have shared with me as a police officer when I go into the schools. Another thing that I'm realizing is that we are a society that I don't know, I don't want to say we are not loving, but we don't necessarily show affection to our children. A hug goes a mighty long way. So that's just about what I would say on this, unless I'm asked another question.
Madam Moderator, can I just add to what Corporal Hammond said? I agree that the church is not the best choice when it comes to counseling of persons who are experiencing DMV or interpartner violence. They need a counseling psychologist. And it is my view, it may not be popular, that in some instances, the church, based on our culture and their focus being on wanting the parties to get back together, I would say to some extent, they facilitate domestic violence, because their priority is geared in a different way. Meaning, the churches teach about being submissive, and different churches preach it different ways based on the denomination. So I'm just speaking generally. Persons in domestic violence situation, you can't just tell them to go and pray, God will work it out. They also need counseling, and they need the right type of counselor and the right type of counseling. And if the relationship is not working out, they need to separate. And if necessary, they may need to eventually apply for their divorce. I don't think the focus should be on trying to tell them to fast and pray about it. God, it will work out soon. Because the reality, some persons got married to the wrong person. That's just a reality. So in order to break the cycle, the church needs to be re-educated in how they approach the whole issue of the breakdown of the family. You cannot mediate violence against your partner. You need to separate. There needs to be, partners need to be compatible. You need to have a certain level of respect. And perhaps that's why Tina Turner said, what love got to do with it? Because it's all good and well. You say you love somebody, but you're not showing the love. And you cannot show love through abuse. And I know a lot of women have accept that, oh, if him not box and thump and keep me, him not love me. So once he's doing that, he loves me. That is foolishness. And we need to re-educate ourselves and re-educate our women and our children. And we need to empower them and help them to realize that they have self-worth, and help them to realize and to build their own self-esteem. And it is through the agencies such as the CPFSA and the programs that they offer, and the Caribbean Graduate School of Theology, the different service clubs like Kiwanis, and we have different clubs in the schools. If we don't reach our young persons, we're just going to have a generation, the next, with the cycle of abuse continuing. We need to break the cycle now and end the conversation, but not to end the conversation, but to be more practical in how we go forward. Thank you.
May I use the opportunity to clarify? I'm happy you mentioned the
yes,
CJSD in the process, because whereas they say we do Christian counseling, we are counseling psychologists by training. And so it's not pastoral counseling that we provide in that context, but it is counseling based on just that. Violence is an illegal act. And so the police needs to be brought in the process. That's what's going to happen. If charges need to be laid, then what we do, we empower persons to report. So this is where now we work with the attorneys, we work with CPFSA, we work with persons who are trying to get action, so that in the process of counseling, there is empowerment. And the client can therefore move away and feel secure, because we also speak at the police offers the protection, victim support and protection. And so through that, they can be empowered so to report and to bring the charges while they can still be protected. And so as we look at the whole landscape, it is, who do you go to for what? So the church has a role to play in the act of pastoral guidance and forgiveness, which is so critical, because we realize that we heard earlier, if you don't forgive this person who has raped you, you're not going to be able to love this child who is the product of the rape. And so that has its role. But when it comes on to now working through the effects, the trauma that has resulted from that, you need somebody who is trained in the area of psychological training to be able to do that. And pastoral, many of our pastors are not so trained, unfortunately. All right, and this is why we distinguish and differentiate very clearly the two.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Carr.
And I'm seeing a comment here from Hanson. Hanson says, I believe a lot of us as parents have not created that space where our children are comfortable speaking to us about everything. So until we create that space, then they will continue to find the wrong persons to speak to outside of our homes. And again, it comes back to positive parenting and creating that space where you can have two-way communication. I mean, in the first panel earlier, we talked about thump and box, and some of us have received the left and the right hand of fellowship from our parents. So for the older ones of us on the platform, we're seen, but we're not heard. But as soon as we begin to grow our own children, we realize the importance of having open communication. We may not like the messaging, but let us give them the freedom to speak and to speak respectfully. And that's one of the things that some of us have had to create in our own homes as we have grown our own children. Thank you so much for that, Hanson. I appreciate the commentary there. So Dr. Chiano, do I have anything else from you, sir?
Thank you, Ms. Stevenson. I don't know if Mr. Hens is still on board. Just quickly to find out from him, if you don't mind. As we know that there is this growing trend where it seems as if there is now a split over of, again, going through some of what have been shared already on this platform, that a parent who has been exposed to traumatic situation, if that parent do not take the time to, go through the process of psychotherapy, the reality is that there's going to be a transference of that same level of aggression that he or she would have been exposed to the next generation. Again, the intergenerational impact of violence. And this we see going on in our schools. Especially recently, we heard about the stabbing of those two little girls, 16 and 17, 16 and 15. I just want to find out from Mr. Hens, if you don't mind sharing with the panel, with the audience here, just to let us know the role that the resolution personnel, the role that you play in order to at least mitigate these issues.
Okay, so Dr. Chiano, Mr. Hines sent apologies. He had some challenges, so he wouldn't be able to join. But Mrs. Bishop is able to assist us with the mediation aspect, so I'm gonna send that over to her. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Madam Moderator. I'll try my best. I was certified as a mediator last year. Dr. Chiano, it's unfortunate what we're seeing in our schools, and it comes down to, and perhaps Dr. Carr would agree, the lack of emotional intelligence in our children and how we communicate with them and how they communicate with us and with each other. Part of the reason for their behaviors can be, it's perhaps part of the reason for their behavior is connected to the domestic violence they have experienced in their homes, and also other issues in relating to a lot of our children would have experienced death and are grieving and not able to deal with it. Some have experienced situations of violence within their extended family. The reality is that in some communities, especially in inner city communities where violence seems to be the norm, persons would have lost relatives to gun violence or stabbing or other incidents, illegal activities, and therefore they have a challenge expressing themselves in what perhaps psychologists would consider a normal way. And Dr. Carr can speak more on that, but the reality is we need to integrate dispute resolution strategies within our schools then. Years ago, I do not know if it is still in the school, perhaps the teachers on this platform can guide me. There was a program called, it was Peace in Schools, what was it called, Dr. Carr?
Peace and Love in School.
Yes, there was a Peace and Love, yes.
Right, PALS. Thank you, Past President Almarie. And I don't think that program is very active anymore. Is it active?
Let me just assist with that. The police, we continue to work along with the Peace Day, because the Peace Day activities is one of our flagship events that we do. Even during the pandemic, about last year, we had our Peace Day concert at National Hero Circle. So the Community Safety and Security branch within the Jamaica Constabulary Force do continue to do some work around the Peace Day initiative, but also as it relates to conflict management and restorative justice. They are in the schools now as part of a partnership between the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Justice. And so I know for sure that they are training students within the school, and they are empowering those students and sensitizing them. Also in my part of the vineyard in Portmore, St. Catherine South Division, we do go into schools and we teach these things. We talk about one of the major thing that is impacting the schools, and Ms. Bishop, you alluded to it just now, the ecosystem around the school and around our children, that is in the community and the school itself, spills over into the school and in the community. Gang violence, because children are being recruited to be a part of gangs. If you know the age of some of these persons who are killed, we call chopper, and are involved in these activities, they are very young. So look at the ecosystem around our children and around the environment in which they exist, because these things are being done in a number of these schools. I know the deans of disciplines and the guidance counselors, they are doing a lot of work. The task is heavy, but I believe that we cannot go away or turn our back on the fact that the family, the foundation of the family, has been shaken, and we need to steady that ship. That is where the issue is. And so we are going to continue to have this. So I believe that we should not build a system from the outside in, but from the inside out. Look at those who are within, and then that is where we need to fix this problem.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Hammond. I appreciate that comment.
Again, back to where we started, parenting. When I go in the school, I tell the teachers, half your battle will be won if you work with parents. There's no way you can fix it unless you train parents, educate them, be role models for them, guide them, support them. Once you do all of that, they will in turn protect their children and be able to keep them out of these gangs. You know, love them. They're loving their children. Pardon me. Ignore that, please. That's my bedtime. So once the parents become parents and are really good at positively parenting their children, a lot of these problems that we're having, we've heard it all the while in Jamaica. Our number one problem is with parents. So that, again, I told parents when I go out, I say to teachers, I stopped in the middle of the pandemic. We were in a pandemic to write the book. It still takes a village. You need the parents, you need the teachers, you need the pastors, you need the librarians. So when they don't have laptops and books and so on, you need the entire village, the community that they live in, who will see and protect the little girls when they're on the road. Yes, we still need that village to be a part of the process, because that's the only way it's going to work. Still takes a village.
Dr. Carr, I don't know if you'd agree with me, but I'm of the view, this might be very far-fetched, but I'm of the view that we need to begin to screen some people to have children.
Well, I don't know how successful it is.
That would be a breach of their constitutional rights.
Knowledge.
I have had a conversation, Ms. Bishop, with a number of my friends, personal community, that based on what we are seeing, and sometimes persons say, in my time, this never used to happen, and people say, but it's a different dispensation. That might be true, but the gravity, cruelty, and the heinous type of seeing, I believe that these times call for some real harsh measures to be put in place in some instances. I'm not taking away from the fact that, yes, we need other things to be on board as well, but sometimes we need to set an example. It's just my
and may I counter propose by saying that what you need to do with a lot of these is to love them into change. You heard men are very emotional. Males are emotional. A lot of times all they need is a love. Don't box and kick them because they're going to rebel and they'll kill you. That's when they get really cold. So you're going to have to start loving. Yes, loving them in out of the gangs. Loving them along the path. Don't send them on the bridge to live because you want to go have sex with your friend. Yeah? It's about love. We have to do more love. I can't say it anymore.
All right, thank you so much,
Okay.
Dr. Carr. Oh, sorry, did I interrupt you, sir?
Just quickly, just to ask Dr. Carr, it's a proposal that is being put forth. What other measures can be put in place to reorient, especially parents who have gone through traumatic situations firsthand?
Well, there are a number of things that are being done and that can be done. So I would have mentioned the whole thing of when you become a parent, maybe what I can advocate for is that they must go through a course to learn how to be a parent and a proper parent, yeah? So training in parenting becomes critical. And we know we have the Parenting Support Commission, they're looking at, and they've trained a number of parent mentors, persons who can train parents how to be better parents and to model that. So that's another approach. And it's, I mean, all of these work together. You also have the facility where if a parent, a mother, for example, and her children, they are being abused, then they can find safe homes. So they can be taken out of a violent situation and be able to live and become all that they can be so they won't die before time, right? We know about the wall, well, it's now totally full downtown. I think they started another one, just of children who've been killed, yes? And so we need safe spaces for our girls and our women and our children in general to be able to thrive and live. So that's important. Halfway houses, safe homes, whatever you want to refer to them as. So we need that. We also need, as we mentioned earlier, psychotherapy, counseling. Not pastoral counseling in all instances, but it also is important in some instances. So the church has to be a part of the solution, and the churches may even be the ones that build these homes. You heard about some of the young people who leave the children's home and they have nowhere to go. So the government is now forced to do that. Where are the godparents? Where are the aunties and the uncles who can step in and be able to be that foster parent, who can be able to help? So the parent needs to be taught how to parent, but also to be supported. So when it is a mother isn't working, she won't send her daughter out to catch man, but in fact, somebody will be there to help with the financials. So yes, we will, thanks for that in the chat about the domestic violence intervention centers. The number of them are throughout the island now, the police forces. So there are safe, confidential spaces for the families to go in and get support when there's violence that's perpetrated against any member of the family. And so there are a number of initiatives. You heard earlier about going to the homes to help those children who unfortunately end up in those situations, helping the parents to be able to get their acts together so that they can then have their children returned. So if it's an unsafe home, the home becomes safe. And it's about how do we create those safe homes. Same home, but it is transformed and changed so that the child can be reintegrated seamlessly into that context. So there are a number of initiatives that are already on this. CD spoke about, sorry, CPFSA mentioned a number of those initiatives, but it's about how we help our parents be better parents and to support those who really want to, but can't afford to and need that support. So it's really intervention from the different levels, teaching them and to become parents and walking that journey with them, supporting them as they go through that process. I hope that helps.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Carr. Mrs. Stevenson.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Chiano. And before Almarie comes to give the vote of thanks, I just want to say thank you so much for being here and sharing those initiatives, Mr. Blake, that you had mentioned earlier. And we have seen that we all have a role to play, whether it be a community approach, visiting facilities, giving gifts for children, starting a Sunday school, a club, a young ladies group, or outreach program, providing advice, Dr. Carr mentioned mentoring, reorientation of parents. There are quite a few things that we can do, whether it be at church, whether it be service clubs, whether it be opening our own homes. We all can chip in because, as the book says, it still takes a village. And I want to say thank you so much. It has been rewarding and an informative 2-panel discussion this evening. And I'm just going to hand it over to Al-Marie to provide us with the vote of thanks. Thank you.
Pleasant, good night. I was about to say good evening, but good night to you all our distinguished guests, members on this platform, all our invited panelists, and our hosts and co-hosts. I just want to say we are well fed. In fact, we had 2 sessions in one with our various panelists and our panel session. So we had 2 panels, but we have been well informed and very good presentations. And we just want to give thanks and to all those who have taken time out to come and share in this panel. We want to recognize lawyer Anne-Marie Bishop, who came up with such an idea as it relates to having such a discussion on today, a special day known as the recognizing our girls. And so I just want to thank Dr. Hilton Fraser, Dr. Lily Thompson, Dr. Vivian Carr. And I don't know if Dr. Vivian Carr remember me, but I remember you. Yes, nutrition is affecting our mental health, and we need to give our children the right food. That was been exercised by Dr. Hilton Fraser. And we want to give you thanks for your informative. I hope all those who came on as parents and social intervention individuals, and all those who are looking at assisting, training the child in the village, would have gained a lot of knowledge tonight. Education is key, and we need to have more forums such as these to help enlighten. And so we want to thank all those who take time out of their busy schedule to educate us on various matters as it relates to mental health, as it relates to training and discipline, as it relates to domestic violence and maintaining various academic standards. Educators, Dr. Chiana, that academical dean mentioned that educators need to go in the community. And we realize the community is also coming to us, Dr. Chiana. And we have a lot as educators, but we know that there is still more to be done in the homes, and that's why we need our parents to be educated. And as it was brought up, a number of our parents, they also need parenting. And so we need panel discussions such as these to go out into the community and to be on platforms such as these, so that individuals can be fed and we can build better community. And so we thank you all, Mr. Philbert Amiel, Lorraine Rainford. As Ms. Lorraine Rainford mentioned, that we need to create the culture where children learn to express themselves within a context. And I totally agree, and I know members on the platform agree with that. And so this is one avenue. And so we are very grateful for you to come on and share, Miss Rainford. Also, Lorna Gay, oh, you were such a vibrant moderator. All right, I guess, you know, so you keep us pumping so we could move on to the second panelist. And so we are quite appreciative and your way in which you have hosted and Andrew Blake. So all our parents, all the special guests, Dr. Vivian Carr, your information and the way in which you led out, talking about positive parenting. We do need positive parenting if we are going to build a better society. And so, Dr. Carr, we want to thank you for your advice, for your information. When we start with strong foundation, we will build better society. And so we thank you. Andrew Blake, youths have different concepts, how they see the world. And so we have to be there for our youth, and you with the child protection and family services, we see there are a lot more we can do as evidence of individuals who wish to see change in our society and the social fabric to be rebuilt. And so we thank you for coming on. Rochelle Stevenson, our second host. We want to thank you. You have moderated very well in keeping us to the very end and not allowing us to drop out. But we give you thanks for your time, and we thank Dr. Chiana as well, who co-hosted. All our Kiwanians who came on and spent the time with us sharing on this platform. We want to thank all the parents and the teachers who have also joined in. If I've left out those individuals who have participated from the various Kiwanis Club who may have done some form of presentation, we want to thank you all. God bless you as you continue to do good in your neighborhood. Thank you all and have a wonderful night.
Thank you so much, Past President Almarie. Let me say thank you to all the presenters who took the time out to be here tonight, and apologies again for Mr. Paul Hines. He indicated his challenges to me, but he was still trying to be present. Thanks to all Kiwanians on the platform, the parents at Immaculate Conception High School, parents from other institutions, and our teachers, prospects, all the moderators, Lana Gay Franklin, Dr. Chana, and Ms. Stevenson, you all did very well. We know we started at a particular time and we should have ended more than an hour and a half ago, but we're still here because this is such an interesting and informative topic. Thanks to persons who have joined us from elsewhere, overseas in the US, Canada, and the UK. We really appreciate you being here. We appreciate the time difference as well. I'm going to ask you all to raise your imaginary glasses and let us toast the Kiwanis International. The Kiwanis International. Friendly and peaceful Jamaica, safe journey home. God bless us all. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to our next meeting. Thank you.